bit of a timeshare in the backfield, but the Texans have been looking for an answer at running back. Joe Mixon was never healthy last year, so David Montgomery is on his way to the Texans, so we'll get to some NFL football on the show today. The Utah Jazz are in action tonight. They've lost 4 straight games, so things are going exactly how they're hoping. But the Denver Nuggets are in town. Nikola Jokic, potentially still the best player in the world. A lot of people think it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but Nikola Jokic certainly worth the price of admission. So the Nuggets in town tonight. The Mammoth are off tonight. 2 really weird games over the weekend for the Mammoth. They smoked Minnesota, who's a very, very good team on Friday, and then they got stomped by Chicago yesterday. Coach Turney not too happy about that, certainly expressing some frustration. They're still in the lead for the wild card, but just barely a couple of points ahead of Seattle as of now. So we'll get to some hockey on the show as we're high speed ahead to the trade deadline. Will Bill Armstrong do anything to add to this group prior to that trade deadline? We'll get to some hockey today. College basketball. My goodness. Were we all wrong about BYU? Whew. BYU is currently tied with West Virginia for 9th in the Big 12. They went 3-5 in February. 2 more games left for BYU. They've lost 3 of their last 4. And the one win in those 4 games was against Iowa State, who's awesome. Iowa State, Arizona tonight. Arizona can all but clinch the Big 12 championship in men's basketball tonight. So BYU at Cincinnati and then home against Texas Tech after losing to West Virginia over the weekend. For the Utes side of things, 3 straight losses now for Utah. Kind of a rough time right now for the local college basketball team at Arizona State since you and I last spoke. They lost 73-60. You have a home game coming up against Colorado tomorrow. And then the final game of the season for Utah basketball is at Baylor on March the 7th. So, little college hoops. It is March. We have officially turned our calendars to March. So happy March to those of you who celebrate. RSL, after dropping the opener of the season in Vancouver, beat Seattle again. RSL has not lost to Seattle at home in the regular season, I think, since 2011. It's like 15 years. It's a pretty wild streak. Seattle's really good. Albert Rusnak in town, but RSL was able to get the win 2-1, and most of the better players continue to sit out with either visa issues or injuries, so a good win for that young group. Rafa Cabral was awesome in goal. They were up 2-0, then Seattle got one late, but it was pretty much over by then. So we'll do a little soccer on the program today. We're just a few months away from the start of the World Cup in our region. Can't wait for that tournament. All right, our first guest, Amy Donaldson, live in studio. Amy has a friend with her. Chris Fott is his name, and we will let Amy kind of introduce Chris. Really fascinating backstory that we'll tell you about. But Amy, our friend from KSL, will be live in studio today. We'll do some college basketball with Joe Cravens, friend of the program. We'll do some BYU, some Utah, some Big 12. Utah State looks like they're on their way to winning the Mountain West Conference, so we'll get with Joe today. Do a little draft, NFL draft with Ben Robinson. And then Xavier Gozo, who had an assist to Ari Piol in RSL's win, will join the program as well. So we've got some basketball, we've got some NFL football, some NFL draft, NFL combine to get to. And then a little soccer as RSL will hit the road now before coming home next week for Austin. Amy Donaldson, Chris Fott, Joe Cravens, Ben Robinson, Xavier Gozo, me, Spence Checketts. All of you, the great listeners, happy Monday to you. Hope you had a great weekend. And that guy, Porter Larson, producing the program. Give me the highlights of Friday's show. What did I miss?
Oh, man. Well, we got to a bunch with my guy Tony Parks and I. Of course, a lot of NFL draft combine stuff that was unfolding as we went. So a lot of the things you wanted to hear about, which is Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu, all these guys going through timing drills, that happened over the weekend. So we were mostly just previewing it. Always really good to chat with Big T Thurl Bailey, talking Jazz, maybe some silver linings, if you will, from Big T Thurl Bailey. That's probably the highlight of my Friday show, just the fact that we got to speak to him.
So Porter producing the show today, booking the show today. Big T, always a great guest. Love Thurl. We'll bring Amy live in studio coming up in a few minutes with a special guest and a good friend we'll get to know. But before Amy stops by on a Monday afternoon, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of the drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 with Prize Picks.
All right, shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. So don't miss this chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. It is available here in Utah, so no worries there. There's a new feature alert. Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700. They're going to hook you up with $50 when you play that first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700, $50 when you play that first $5 lineup. Because on Prize Picks, it is always good to be right. Porter, can you fathom being 6'4", 311 pounds and running a sub 540?
Ridiculous.
I mean, when I saw, of course, we're talking about Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu. I mean, both those dudes, and we've known for a while now that they've been on the radar of course, NFL scouts with potentially both being first round picks and Spencer maybe being a top 5 pick. I don't know what I was expecting, but when I saw that number and his measurables, a sub 540 for a athlete who weighs 170 pounds is a good. Spencer Fano essentially ran the 40 in the same amount of time Chase Roberts did. Think about that.
It's a remarkable feat. If you're one of those big guys, anything under 5 is like. It used to be historic. Now we had 9-10 guys, right? Like Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano were both in the top 10. Spencer tied for the top number at the NFL Combine for offensive linemen, but that's just moving real quick. For some perspective, Tom Brady ran a 5.3, right? We're in a different age now where athletes just are a little. I don't want to say better, but a little more advanced in those kinds of things, right? It just seems like the numbers get better and better each year. And you're seeing it there for Utah. That's a good look for those two guys, and two guys that I think will likely be first-round draft picks.
Yeah, everybody has mock drafts now, so you can pick your favorite mock draft. Every mock draft that I've seen has Spencer at least in the top 7 or 8, and most of them have Caleb in the first round as well. I would imagine after the results, and certainly this is an opportunity, as we discussed on Thursday before I left town, for these execs and scouts and GMs to sit down with these draft picks as well. And I guarantee you both those kids just killed the interview process. So we'll see what happens with Logan Fano and Lander Barton in the mix as well. Utah's Pro Day has not been announced yet, but I would imagine those two will be able to help themselves out on that day, not necessarily having the combine that they were hoping for. Dallin Bentley also pretty much scored off the charts, very athletic tight end. Didn't have as far as the numbers go, nothing really jumped out at you. But, of course, it is that athletic tight end that every team in pro football wants. So we'll see when the draft rolls around. So excited to watch them and what they did with their numbers, their measurements. And like I said, they're going to kill the interview process. We'll kind of continue to track the progress. And this continues to be just an excellent opportunity for exposure for Utah football. We were talking about this during Crosstalk with Sean. Jim Harding leaving was a blow. I mean, he's one of the best offensive line coaches in America, has been for a long time. Jordan Gross now stepping in to fill those shoes. But anytime you can send athletes, not just to the NFL, but first-round picks, top 10 picks, incredible exposure across the landscape for your program, like free marketing in so many different ways. So spring football, by the way, I believe for Utah, it's going to be March 17th, your boy's birthday, no big deal. BYU got rolling on Friday. BYU typically has spring football starting a little bit earlier. So obviously, football is topically something that never really sleeps, even though the season has been over for quite some time, and we won't see real football up until the spring. All right, couple quick thoughts here. A couple of more games left for both Utah and BYU basketball. Utah has Colorado at home tomorrow, and then they're at Baylor to close out the season. Right now, the Utes are tied for last in the conference, 2-14. 10-19 overall. Our buddy Jason Batakia from the Salt Lake Tribune did a really cool story on Alex Jensen over the weekend. And Al is a very salient communicator. There's not a lot of BS. He'll just kind of give it to you. He'll just shoot you straight and kind of tell you how it is. And I'll just encourage you to go read it because ultimately Alex knew, based off the timing of the hire, that was just a little bit later in the cycle that you would prefer, that this was going to be a bit of a bear to try to get this thing turned around very, very quickly. It's hard to do that when you have one player that returned from a year ago and you're trying to rebuild on the fly when most of the talent has already committed to other schools. So we've talked about this pretty much all year. I mean, to start the season, the schedule is a little bit soft, but, they win their first 5 games. They beat Ole Miss. And so you're going, okay, are they a little bit further ahead of schedule than we thought? Now, the issue continues to be, in my opinion, we'll see what Joe Cravens has to say about this. I think the Big 12 is the best conference in college basketball this year. I think it was the SEC a year ago, but I think it's the Big 12 this year. The Big 10 has some awesome teams. So does the SEC. But top to bottom, I mean, look, BYU, if you include Richie, who unfortunately is hurt for the year, BYU has 3 or 4 pros, depending on what you think of Keba Keita's potential to play pro basketball. I don't think Keba is skilled enough to play in the NBA. But when you have athleticism like that, if you want to go overseas and get a paycheck, you can certainly do that. And they're 8-8, BYU is in the Big 12. I mean, they're tied with West Virginia and Cincinnati for 9th in the conference. And look, that's not a knock on BYU. It's more of a testament to how good this conference is top to bottom. I picked Houston to win the league. It looks like it's going to be Arizona. Texas Tech, Iowa State, Iowa State, Arizona tonight. And I believe if Arizona wins, they basically clinch the conference because they have a 2-game cushion on both Houston and Texas Tech. Arizona at 14-2, 27-2 overall. I mean, the top half of this conference is incredibly talented. And we have a freshman class, by the way, that is really unprecedented in the history of the game. The Big 12, the Big 10, and the SEC, there's a good chance player of the year for each conference will be a freshman. AJ is still very much in the mix to win it for BYU. Cameron Boozer, of course, with Duke. And I mean, when you go look at some of the mock stuff and listen to some of the scouts, the majority of the anticipated lottery picks are freshmen. They're kids. So it's wild what NIL and transfer portal has done for college basketball because, in my opinion, it's actually been a good thing as long as your program can keep up with the changes. And certainly BYU has shown the ability to do that, and they do have proof of concept, sending the Yegor Deming kid who's playing really well in the NBA for Brooklyn. And AJ will be one of the top 2 picks. Vegas odds as of now, AJ is going to be the number 1 overall pick. So even though this year so far, I mean, we still have tournament time, but this year so far has not been what anybody was expecting down in Provo for BYU. But just getting AJ on campus, even if it's only for 1 year, and watching him flourish the way that he has as potential conference player of the year, even if you're an 8 or a 9 seed in the tournament and you only win a game, yeah, that is far off what any of us were expecting. The AJ story in and of itself makes this year a win for BYU because it is the story. How did you get the number 1 player in the country to choose to live in Provo, Utah? How did you do that? And can you replicate it? BYU's in the mix for some big-time prospects as we move a little bit closer and closer to decision day and signing day. So, long year for Utah Hoops. Badly need a talent upgrade. Certainly some investment when it comes to the monetary portion to make sure your economics are where they need to be. Alex is a really bright basketball mind. He is a really good coach. He will get this thing going if he gets some support. And we'll see what BYU can do now as I think they're 1-3 since Richie went down. And the one win was against Iowa State, who's one of the top 4 or 5 teams maybe in the country. So, little college hoops. Jazz at action tonight. Nikola Jokic is in town. The Jazz have lost 4 straight games, which is what they're trying to do. All right, we will catch a break. Amy Donaldson, Chris Fote live in studio coming up. So keep it right here on a Monday Drive on ESPN 700. All right, the Jazz are in action tonight. It is the Denver Nuggets. Nikola Jokic worth the price of admission. If you're sick of watching Isaiah Collier trying to come back from a 45-point deficit in the fourth quarter. We'll get to some Jazz basketball, back to some college basketball, but let's welcome in live in studio our friend Amy Donaldson from KSL. Big day for you, Amy. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
I want you to introduce our friend because you know him. You just had a podcast released, and so let's just kind of get into it.
I've been torturing Chris for a long time, since he was in his early 20s.
Okay.
Didn't cover him in high school, but his first Olympics. So actually, his first Olympics were also my first Olympics for the Deseret News in 2010.
Oh, okay.
But I'm launching a new podcast. It's called Coach's Book Club. David James and I are talking to coaches about the books that inspired them or changed them, influenced them in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're talking to them about their backgrounds and then why this book matters, why they recommend it or what they learned from it.
Sure.
And then, it's been really, really fascinating. And I've read some great books, including the one recommended by U.S. head bobsled coach Chris Fote, also Lieutenant Colonel in the Army and American Fork grad.
It's a rather impressive pedigree. I mean, what are we doing with our lives, Amy? Chris, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Thanks for having us.
So you just got back from your third Olympics, but first as a coach, yeah?
Absolutely. Yep, got
Actually,
back about a week ago.
No, it's four.
My third as an athlete, one as a coach.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so why don't you give us some background on you? Let's just start there for our listeners to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, so I was a track and field athlete in college, got recruited to try out for the USA bobsled team, made my first games in 2010, deployed to Iraq 3 months after those Olympic Games were over. Came back, did 2 more Olympics, then went back to the Army for the last 4 or 5 years, and the opportunity came up to coach and got hired on and got promoted to head coach 2 years ago and just led our men's and women's team at the games over in Italy.
Very nice. Well, let me just say thank you for your service. Appreciate you for sure. I always find this fascinating because in this job, you end up working with a lot of ex-athletes, right? The transition from athlete to coach. Because you can, I've never heard one former athlete say they prefer coaching. You still thirst for that, don't you, as the athlete? Yeah.
I think you still do. An event, as we all age and we get too old to keep competing, you have to transition to coaching. And it is more stressful in a lot of ways because you're no longer in the arena doing the actual work. You're behind the scenes trying to make sure athletes are ready, but it's kind of out of your control because the athletes are the ones that have to perform on that day, right?
Absolutely. So what's the book? I got to know the book recommendation.
It's called Endurance, Shackleton's Incredible Voyage, and Chris can tell you why he chose it.
Yeah, I chose it first and foremost. So it's him taking a trip through the South Pole in 1915. And in our sport, we spend a lot of time outside in the cold, dark, and it's a pretty challenging environment in our sport. And this journey took off, and they actually got stranded there for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And it's a story of how he kept his men engaged and busy and kept providing them hope, even when their mission changed, right? So it's kind of very much applies to sports, too.
Very cool. Very cool.
They actually live on an ice drift. I mean, it's if you know anything about Arctic conditions, there's not land. There was just the ship gets locked into moving ice.
Yeah.
And so it's just getting twisted, and eventually it sinks. But the thing that there's a lot of stuff about the book I loved. In fact, Chris was kind of on the fence. You had a few that you liked, and I was like, please pick this one. I want to read it. But it was, how you put a team together. What are you looking for? You're not just picking the best guys. We've seen that lots in sports.
Mm-hmm.
You get the best 5 athletes, and sometimes you get a crappy team.
Yeah.
And so how he picked the team, how he picked the men who went with them, and then how he played to their strengths or helped when took the weakest link with him.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was interesting. But I thought his thoughts on that as it relates to coaching, but also just as it relates to your own perspective, when all the evidence is that hope is lost.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
We talked about BYU basketball. We could just go right there. Right now. All hope is lost. You're not doing anything they predicted you do in the preseason. That's the thing I love about the book is how do people hold on to hope when all the evidence is you shouldn't have any.
Right. No, it's fat. I'll have to check it out. And you and I talk about it's the hope that kills you all the time, right? The Ted Lasso, it's the hope that kills you.
Yep. Yeah.
And look, I was completely wrong about BYU basketball. I thought they'd be a top 3 team in the league and maybe make a run to the Elite 8 or Final Four. But that's
all I'm going to say is it makes for a way better story. Okay, so Chris, for example,
Yeah.
In 2010, both of us at our first Olympics, and the now famous night train, Steve Holcomb, a Park City native, was driving that sled number 1, but Chris and John Napier was his pilot. They were in sled number 2. They're ranked number 3 in the world. They crash on their second run, and as do some of the best bobsled drivers in the world. That track, the gentleman was killed on that track the day before the opening ceremonies. Again, this is our first games. We have this. This is our introduction to it. It's
2010, did you say?
2010,
Okay.
In Vancouver.
Okay.
And so after that, and I remember I'll never forget talking to him. My dad's a Vietnam veteran. 3 of my nephews are currently in the service right now. One of them's in the Middle East right now on a Navy ship. And but I'll never forget talking to him about that and him saying, like, throughout this experience, it's been amazing, but I have been thinking about the guys and gals that I trained with, the men and women that I went through training with and served with, and that I owe them something. And crashing felt like failure to him, but I think he'll tell you now, they did not see it that way.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, we learned a lot from that experience. In sports, there's games you don't do well. There's years that you don't do well, but it's important that you get back up and you keep on trying. And that's what we did 4 years later. Came back and won a silver medal in 2014.
Very nice, very nice. Amy's going to get a kick out of this because this is a sports talk radio show. It is, but I want to ask you about how you feel about our country. Representing America in the Olympic Games and also serving in the Army. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you probably have a lot of pride in our country, yeah?
Absolutely. I think that's what the unique things about the Olympic Games does. It brings the country together. You have people who have never watched a game of curling in their whole life, and they're screaming at their TV hoping that we win. I think it brings us all together, brings out the best of us, and I think it's just a growing brand, and it's such a great thing to be a part of. And obviously wearing the flag on my Army uniform as well as my bobsled uniform is a great honor to represent the best of us. Yeah,
for sure. There were so many sound bites, Amy, of Olympians being asked about the current state of things. And I'll just say the current state of things are a little complex.
Yes.
Especially the last couple of days.
Yeah, and Penny, for your thoughts on all of it, quite frankly. But what did you like? A lot of people.
I have thoughts.
Well,
but
a lot of people were mad at the media for asking questions and just not staying in the sporting space, which I think is off bounds. Like, you can ask a question and then you can decide if you resonate with the answer. What do you think?
I think life is just. I mean, politics. I always say this: politics is how we solve problems. So life is inherently political. And you can be mad about that, or you can try to roll with it. If you don't care about politics, you don't have to care about politics. If you care, if your life is affected by it, I pay attention to things that affect my life and my family. Do I pay attention to what's happened with the Department of Defense and this? These nephews are boys I raised. They're my kids, right? One of them's at Hill. We didn't get to go to. We had tickets to the Jazz game because they're 24/7, being ready to help. And they, I think, joined the military similar to you. Like, we have a great pride in our family for this country. I believe in the ideals of this country. I want us to live up to that. I'd say it's like anyone's personal, like my own personal credo. I don't hit it every day. I don't come close some days. I want us to keep striving and to keep trying to be that version of us that we set out in the Declaration of Independence, that the Constitution outlines. That's what I want us to strive for. I'm not mad at the media for asking. I think you ask hard questions. I've asked him really off. I mean, not embarrassing. How did it feel to get dragged on your head at 90 miles an hour? I mean, he has a stutter. I said to him, like, can I write about that? You know? And
I would not have known.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. But I mean, we have to ask, because how else life is about, like, if you're avoiding the tough conversations, you're not learning anything.
Yeah, and your boys, Petra, too. I think it's some people want, as Olympians, we really are only relevant every 4 years, to to an extent.
Yeah.
But I think it's good for some people to have the opportunity. If they want to use that platform at that time to express their feelings, I think it's okay. But you have to understand it might come with some backlash, which it did for a few athletes.
Yeah.
I also think it's a time to kind of put politics aside and just compete for your country because it's such a unique experience about the games. But I can see it going, either way too.
Well, and I think you could, like, I thought the women in speed skating and ice skating, I love that some of what their message was be yourself. Make sure you don't lose the joy of competition, right? When Amber Glenn talked about being on her period and how difficult that was. I can't tell you the number of times I've discussed this with women athletes, but they haven't wanted to talk about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, there's a lot of things, and I think we're getting better at having some of those conversations, and we're getting worse at having other conversations.
Yeah, no, well said. And, because of the current climate of the current events, I think it is a little bit more heightened for everybody. Mm-hmm. I always appreciate if a media member has the courage to ask the question. I mean, you've been coming on my show for 7 years now. You know my approach. And I appreciate when an athlete is courageous enough to give an answer, even if it's laced in certain things that some people disagree with. Like, but that's what we're supposed to do. That's how we're supposed to communicate.
I'm also fine with people saying, I don't really want to talk about
Sure.
that. And I always say to people, like, I'll ask everything. That's my job.
Yeah.
I mean, my boss once said to me, why are you putting this in a story? That has to come out. We can't publish whatever. And I said, my job is to get information.
Yeah.
My job is to have those conversations. And what we do with them is up to us. And sometimes an athlete wants to have that conversation. And like, I remember talking to Tora Bright, Australian snowboarder, when she won her medal. She wanted to talk about her faith. Mm-hmm. And at the time, that was not cool. And I remember calling my boss and saying, I don't think you're going to like my story that much, but it's going to sound kind of like a church news story. But this is her story.
Yeah.
This is how she got there. And I feel like part of our job as writers is just to reflect that moment as best we can without putting our own spin on it.
Yeah.
Does it interest me? Sure, it interests me. How do you get through hard times? How do you come back from something that like in 2010 when you felt like, I'm going to go to war to escape this, and then what your fellow soldiers told you.
Yeah, they were very, happy to watch me compete, and they felt a part of that since I was one of them, in the same training as they had done.
Sure.
All that stuff I'd been through with them, and to be competing at the world's largest stage, they very much appreciated that.
So when it comes to, there has to be a lot of parallels from serving and then also leading, right, an Olympic team and athlete once upon a time and now the head coach. So talk about that cross-pollination a little bit, some of the lessons that you try to bring into both spaces you exist in.
Yeah, I think just two that I'll mention for brevity's sake is just one is trying to keep your athletes as confident as you possibly can at all times. Because as you know, as an athlete, again, there's games that are great. There's games that are not quite as great too. And then the number two thing is just how important that mental strength is, and just being able to overcome yourself as your worst critic, and just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and to being okay with the monotony that is training every single day.
Sure.
It's just the weightlifting. It's more sprinting, more weightlifting, more sprinting, recovery, and it can get boring. And so having that mental strength to push through that is absolutely huge.
And I would imagine with some of the experiences you've had in the service, pressure in a bobsled isn't something that's really going to overwhelm you. Is that fair?
Yeah, it keeps things into perspective.
Yeah.
A bad day on the bobsled hill is not as bad as a bad day in Iraq, right?
For sure.
So it keeps things in perspective and keeps the athletes grounded and not get too high or too low when things go wrong. Because some athletes, younger, haven't experienced, I would say, some very hard things in life, and they just go off the rails when the smallest thing happens to them. Like, is this real? Okay, let's really take a step back.
Yeah.
Have some perspective on what this actually means long term. I think that definitely helped our team this year compete, and we had a very good games, especially our women winning three of the 6 medals out there.
Very nice. My brothers run a activewear clothing line called Roan Apparel, and every year they do like an appreciation month for veterans, and it's really all about like mental health, right? Because whether mental health, I'll just speak for myself. It really wasn't even addressed when I was younger, right? And I was raised by a therapist, by the way. My mother is a therapist. She got her master's degree at Columbia. And so we were encouraged to have opinions, and we would sit around the dinner table, and my dad was always one where, okay, here's the topic. We're not just going to eat dinner. We're actually going to get into it. But I feel like there's been so much progress made, and I wonder what sort of insight you have on it as somebody that has probably seen a lot of things that none of us will ever see, and how you kind of just cope with that and exist in the real world. You seem like a very balanced guy to me.
Appreciate that. No, I think it is important to talk about it. I think the more you do, just the more it becomes normal, and it's a release. And I think with the athletes, even, and when you're at the games, you have hundreds of millions of people watching you compete. You have to have be able to kind of compartmentalize that and to be focused in the moment and not worry about what's happened before or what will happen afterwards either. It's harder to do than it is to say, but
yeah. I would imagine having an outlet like you've had with being a high-level Olympic athlete probably helps as well. I mean, something as simple as just being able to exercise and train, yeah?
You're exactly right. I talk about this all the time with people that I've worked with that have had a hard time, is how important getting outside is, how important exercise is to build bonds and just for your own, mental health. It's absolutely huge.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have so many things going. It's a really fascinating dichotomy of all of these different things, Amy, that he has going on in his life.
Well, and
really
I think
cool.
I'll throw another one out there. In 2018, he was convinced to come back to bobsled.
Okay.
And Steve Langton as well, right? And by Steve Holcomb, who was a Park City native, best pilot in U.S. history in bobsled, and then Steve passed away in May.
Oh.
And so they dealt with the grief, the loss, the lack of leadership, the vacuum that was left by him as a leader. And he can talk to you about even the conversations they had about maybe we should just quit now. Maybe it's not worth the comeback at this point.
That's very sad. Sorry to hear that.
No, yeah, that's kind of how sports works. And obviously, when Steve Holcomb he passed away, he was gone forever. But in sports, you saw this year with the Broncos, for instance, they lost their Nix.
Yep.
Bo Nix had a backup quarterback that went into the playoffs, and you can't just quit. That's not how sports work.
Yep.
That's not what we're supposed to do as human beings, right? And so, it's one of those things where we fought. Instead of fighting to win top 3, we're fighting to take 20th place and get all of our runs. But it took a lot amongst the team. We had lots of conversation about what this means to us, what this would mean to him, and just, as professional athletes, what we want to leave as a legacy. That is always just giving your best regardless of the outcome.
So how many medals? You won a silver.
Silver in 2014.
Okay, what do you do? Where is it? Where do you keep your medal?
It is in my nightstand.
Okay.
In my room. I pull it out a couple times a year now. Obviously, when I first won it, you wear that thing in the shower. You wear it out to eat. You wear it everywhere.
Yeah.
You brought it to the start of the Salt Lake Marathon.
Yeah,
Nice.
That thing goes with you everywhere. And obviously, as time goes on, it's not, it's a little bit, it changes a touch.
If I won a silver medal in the Olympics, I would never take it off.
Well, that's us in media.
Yep.
Well, you're probably not a mediocre athlete. I'm probably putting myself in the same category. But yeah, we would brag it up. But yeah, I mean, I think that watching you guys win the silver in Sochi, and then seeing the way bobsled works, everybody who's qualified competes the first 2 runs the first day.
Okay.
So day 1 they do 2 runs, day 2 you do 2 runs, and it's a total of 4 runs that decides the winner. So you have to drive that icy track 4 times really well.
Yeah.
And so, in 2018, Chris was fighting to get to number 20 because after only the top 20 run the second day.
Okay.
And so I just thought it was such a juxtaposition to see him go from this medal where they 3/100ths of a second.
Yeah.
That's how they got their medal. And I remember him saying to me, I want my kids to know that you don't quit.
Yeah.
You do your best every time. And I just thought it was a tremendous thing to witness.
It's always been so interesting to me, and we've got Amy Donaldson and Chris Vogt live in studio. Chris is the head coach of the Olympic bobsled team, and he was an athlete for a couple of cycles. I've always found it so interesting that you train your entire life for something that comes, like Seinfeld does the thing where he's like, it's the nose thing, like you train your entire life, and the difference between whether or not you are a hero or no one will ever hear of you again is like a millisecond, dude. It's wild to me.
Yeah, that's one of the unique things about the Olympic Games, that it only happens every 4 years.
Right, yeah.
And so you have to be good, not only good in general, you have to be good on that day.
Yeah.
I've seen so many world world champions and people that have had a lot of success in the sport, but they come to that one moment and they just crumble or things don't fall their way.
Right.
And it's like you said, they fall into where no one really knows who they are. So that's what kind of unique thing about the games is you have once every 4 years, I think that's 1,460 days. That's a long time to train for one event.
Yeah, and and you referenced this earlier. We were actually talking about this last week, Sean and I, when we were doing crosstalk. And I don't exactly know why it is, but we were talking about like Home Depot had this commercial where it's like we're the home of the Olympic athletes. It's like, well, wait a second. Is Apollo Anton Ono going to help me find a drill bit? Like, how do you are world famous for a few minutes, and then I think a lot of Olympic athletes may struggle to find their place in the world, yeah?
Absolutely. Trying to make that transition where your whole life you have, ID'd as someone who does sports.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you have to get a job. You have to choose where to work that day.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely a hard transition. And then unless you're one of those choice few in the Olympic Games that makes sponsorships and makes a bunch of money.
Yeah.
A lot of my teammates, a lot of guys and girls that I coach, they have part-time jobs. They
Sure.
work at Starbucks or they work at a store in the off season. So it's really hard to find a way to make a living while also trying to chase your Olympic dreams.
Well,
Which is why I love the Olympics.
Sure,
Let me
sure.
just say that there's this in sports we have, I call them the majors, the three majors, right? And there's these really clear paths. And you get scholarships or you get support. It's so easy. And I remember covering winter sports and meeting people who, Eric Burgess, who competed in aerial skis, right, and went on to coach as well. But he went to Lake Placid and camped in his car and ate peanut butter and jelly every day and cleaned the jumps and helped with maintenance so they would let him jump for free, right? And then he gets to represent his country and win a medal. Like, there's just those kinds of stories. I mean, there was a snowboarder here that was living in his van that Alex Cabrero and I did a story on. There's but the path is not clear. You have to have another job. You have to have another plan. You have to see something that, like the women's ski jumpers who weren't even allowed to jump in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And they were doing this sport, and then they were like, hey, but you can't do it in the Olympics, right? Lindsey Van, she owned the record jump on the 2010 hill, but she wasn't allowed to compete because she was a woman.
Yeah.
Right? They had to sue. And so you see something, like they're just the way they make things possible. And then we just take it for granted. Like, oh, this always existed.
Yeah.
You could just become a bobsledder, right?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason I chose the book that I chose, Endurance. It's just a gritty tale of how do you find a way to, have success when it doesn't seem apparent that you can.
Yeah.
That being said, Spencer, if there are sponsors, we love our sponsors. And we love to not be in our vans and have to have these part-time
Absolutely.
jobs. So the USOPC has gotten better with that.
Okay.
But I still have a ton of athletes who just basically they go broke for the 4 to 8 years. They're trying to live that dream.
Yeah. And I want to be clear, I'm not disparaging anyone who works at Home Depot, okay? I just the irony.
Next time you need a drill bit, they're going to remember.
Well, the irony of just kind of that connecting point.
Yeah.
Where it's like after you have the highest moment of your life, like what's next for you? And you wouldn't imagine like LeBron, leaving the Lakers to go work at Home Depot. It's just and these athletes for a moment in time have everybody's attention.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they're out of sight, out of mind.
I think it's the nature of developing sports. I mean, you see in women's sports, I knew when the WNBA started, women who worked part-time jobs at clothing stores or restaurants, right?
Or having to go overseas in the off season, right?
It was overseas, and hopefully we are getting away from that now. But I think that's always the thing when something's developing. I think there is more support for the Olympics. I mean, I can't believe how much different it is. I was literally the only person from the D News there. Like Chris is used to me taking photos with my camera.
Yeah.
It was it's just such a massive. It's so popular now, and I remember who was the Russian bobsled Zubkov?
Alexander Zubkov.
Zubkov. So he was in Utah for competition, and he did a pretty lengthy interview with a couple of us. I think Tim was here, Tim Reynolds, and I just remember him saying, sort of mocking us and saying, "You Americans, you don't know what good sport is. Like you don't embrace alpine, you don't embrace bobsled." He's like, in my country, I'm in all over Europe, I'm famous. I'm rich because I can drive a bobsled.
Yeah.
Steve Holcomb is poor, and he's a great pilot, right?
Right.
And again, he was doing it in kind of this like, you guys are dumb type of thing, right? Like there was an arrogance to it. But I thought, I think that is something it is one of the things we have loved about the games. It used to be all amateurs. It used to be these emerging things. And so there is now big business involved in and there always has been in Olympics, but there's also still these really incredible moments where somebody found a way to do something that nobody thought they could.
Yeah.
And they ate peanut butter and jelly and worked at Home Depot or whatever.
Very cool stories.
Well, and also, I'll just speak for myself. This year, based off of a number of different factors, it was very refreshing to sit down and watch the Olympics. Like, I'm single, I live alone, and I was joking, I'm going home for my dinner date with Mike Tirico every night to watch the coverage, and you're not hit over the head with over-unders. You don't see ads for gambling. Like real-time ability to waste your rent money on LeBron's fourth assist in the second. Like, all of that stuff is getting so exhausting. And then we've got a local basketball team that's unserious about competing, and they're laughing about it on the bench when they're getting run by 30. And there's so many moments where I'm watching the things that I have to cover, and I'm like, do these guys even give a rip about their endeavor? Are they grateful that they're paid millions of dollars to play a children's game? And then you turn on the Olympic Games, and people are weeping tears after winning a bronze. Just achieving that moment. I just found this cycle, for whatever reason, so refreshing to watch.
Now I'm getting chills as you speak like that. 'Cause again, you train for 4 years for your one chance to actually shine, and you're not going to make millions of dollars doing it. You've worked your whole life for it. That's what makes, I think, the games very unique, and why it's just so much fun to watch, whether it's curling or bobsled or aerials, all these sports that we don't watch for 4 years, but when they're on TV, you are glued to it, and you're invested, and you're cheering so loud, and I just absolutely love to hear it.
Well, and I think this year there were so many stories of perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we want to go with the Alfred Shackleton model, right? And that, like, Alana Myers, she's tied for the most decorated U.S. Olympian in women's winter sports, with six now. She won but it was her first gold.
And that's right. Yeah.
She wins.
I did see that.
Signs to her sons are deaf, and she signs Mommy One to them.
Yeah.
And she falls to the ground, and I was like, I was crying. I'm still gonna cry about it because I thought, think of the sacrifices that she's made to be there to have this moment.
Yeah.
But like, what perseverance to say, and her husband, and to say like, I believe in you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna invest in you.
Yeah.
We're gonna do this. Their whole family.
Yeah,
was on the
she
road.
was 41 years old. She travels on tour with her kids to see, when we're at the track for 4 to 5 hours, then we go to the gym for 2 or 3 hours. We come back at night, we get a chance to just relax and breathe, right?
Yeah.
She's got 2 kids that she's got to take care of at nighttime. And what she overcame at her 5th games to finally win a gold medal in the 4th heat. She was in 2 the whole time. That 4th heat, the girl from Germany had a small mistake her last run, so she crossed the. She was able to win that gold medal. I think it was only 400ths of a second.
400ths, yep.
Yeah, to finally, after she's been in the sport for 20 years now.
It's. I mean, I'm a sucker for it. I will admit.
Yeah.
So one of my first jobs,
like, it was all like the kid who Ilya Malin, the figure skater who was the quad god,
right?
Who fell in his, is it the free skate? I don't know which is which. One of the skates, and so he blew his chance at getting a gold or any medal, right? And then to come back in the exhibition and basically compete and do something that said, this is much more mentally tough than you know. Like, there were so many examples of people who and Amber Glenn did. She finished 8th, right? But that's an 8th that she came back after disappointment, after your dreams are crushed, right? Like you say, it's every 4 years. And then to come back and say, I'm still going to do my best. I just thought there was story after story about perseverance and just sticking with it and getting back up after and no matter what the finish was, whether it was a medal like Alana or finishing 8th like Amber, I thought that it was just, for me, this testament of, like, life is hard. It's going to knock you down. Get back up because it's worth it. Yeah.
So what I was going to say before we break is one of my first jobs out of college was running one of the venues for the 2002 games. It was the Salt Lake Ice Center, where we had short track, speed skating, and figure skating. That's why I was referencing Apollo Anton. And I don't know that I fully really understood. And I was never an Olympic athlete or a coach, but just having that experience, and we were in charge of, like, the kiss and cry zone and security and everything. And it hooked me. Like and so now and I love the summer games too, but I watch the Winter Olympic Games with a different prism just based off of the cool experience that we had here in 2002,
Yeah, and for us to have that chance again to host.
Yeah,
in
awesome.
8 years
Yep.
is just remarkable.
Yep.
I was a college freshman here when we had the games in 2002, and
Uh-huh.
to be able to be a small piece of that, to see the world come together. And I've met a lot of coaches who are now coaches. They actually compete in 2002, and everyone has such positive things to say about the games that were held here. They loved them.
It was really cool. All right, Chris Fote is with us live in studio. Of course, our friend Amy Donaldson is with us as well. New podcast alert. It is called The Coaches Book Club, and episode 1 is out right now. We'll tell you where you can get that after a quick break. But Amy and Chris in studio coming up next right here on ESPN 700. No local college hoops tonight. Utah and BYU back at it. Utah State on the precipice of winning the Mountain West Conference. So Joe Cravens will join us in about 20, 25 minutes from now. The NFL Draft Combine is rolling along, so Ben Robinson will join us to talk some draft. And then Xavier Gozo, who had an assist on the Pio goal over the weekend as RSL won the home opener 2-1. But Amy Donaldson and Chris Fote live in studio, getting to know a new figure and a new friend here on the show. Chris is currently the head coach of the bobsled team and just got back from Italy. And his side gig is he is well, he is in the Army. What's your title? So I can.
So I'm a lieutenant colonel.
Lieutenant
in the Army.
colonel.
My
Okay.
current unit is the Army's world-class athlete program.
Okay, very cool. So we were talking about this a little bit earlier, and Dave Chappelle, his new special on Netflix, he basically laid it out. He said, you don't have to have an opinion on everything. You can sit some conversations out. And so I am not going to sit here to, claim that I'm an expert in geopolitics or what the invasion means, but this is right in your wheelhouse. So give us your thoughts on what's currently going on.
Yeah, we kind of were talking about during the break. It's interesting that the Olympic Games just happened. That brings the world, into one group to focus on sports and unity and all that stuff. Of course, now we are at war to an extent. And, to my experience, having been in Iraq, the Iranian regime was responsible for countless deaths of Americans while we were there. They trained, they funded, they brought in weapons. So to see them gone, I'm just happy to see them dead and gone, to be honest. Now, what happens the next 24 hours, the next week, next month, the next couple of years is yet to be seen.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone is really mourning the loss of those types of people.
I hope you don't mind me sharing this on air, but I asked if you were potentially going to be deployed, and you said your unit is not deployable, but if it reaches a certain level, you're going to volunteer.
Absolutely. Like I did in 2010, if something were to happen, this does delve and get worse and worse.
Yeah.
It does spread. I would definitely do my job. I joined the Army before I started sport.
Yeah.
And I love our nation and what it stands for and my time that I've spent in the Army up to this point. And definitely if it gets to that point, I would volunteer.
See, it's badass. We just need more people like
I will say, as I say about my two nephews are in the Air Force and one in the Navy, and being raised by a Vietnam veteran, it was my sincere hope that we would not break our young people again like this. I want us to have peace. I want us to do better at working things out in a different way. Chris can speak to that better than I can because he lived through it. But I run with veterans I have for the last 11 years, and that's not any kind of service changes you. And I want us to honor that service. That's the first thing.
100%.
We don't do that at all. And then the other thing is, it's my sincere hope that we just don't break young people the way we have so casually in the past.
Yeah. Chris, I'd be interested in your insight because it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before with making sure you're taking care of yourself, right? Whether it's suddenly you're training for the Olympics and it's this unbelievably high moment and then boom, it's over and you're kind of going, wait a second, or you're deployed and you're fighting a literal war. Yep. And then you come home and you have to exist in the ecosystem. It's got to be challenging.
It is. I'll speak to the Olympic athletes first because they do. It's amazing how hard a lot of Olympic athletes who they trained since they were 4 years old, 5 years old for this one moment. It happens when they're 24 or they're in their late 20s, early 30s, and to have that letdown of the attention and you realize that you have to move on with your life. So I think it's just important to find a purpose, find other things to do, to keep yourself invested in friends and family. I think making human connection is one of the most important things. It's a really good talking about the book Endurance, but there's a book called Tribe by Sebastian Junger. It's only about 120 pages, but one of the best books ever written on why humans talk and we act like we do and how important human connection is. I think it's easy to lose that right now with Instagram and TikTok, and you spend all day in your room just watching videos. Yeah,
no, it's good insight there because you exist in both of these different ecosystems where certainly making sure you're taking care of yourself has got to be paramount.
Yeah, there's always that balance of speaking about your feelings, and obviously fall in the camp of usually not speaking about my feelings.
Just unless the reporter's like, hey.
It's the way I grew up. So I think there's a balance there too. I think sometimes we can ruminate on them and just talk about them.
Yeah.
So I think there's a balance there. Every person is unique and different, but it's definitely for me the one piece of advice that's helped me be successful as I've kind of navigated both these worlds is just finding value in friends and family and staying connected to people, human, face-to-face type conversations.
It's well said. And it's interesting because you just said something that stood out to me because, again, I was raised by a therapist, right? And so my mother always has this kind of process that she encourages us to follow, and it's like this new generation now where everybody is processing trauma, and everybody is my childhood, and my mom hurt me, and so now I can't exist like a human, and I use all of that as a shield for bad behavior. And my mom, she'll always say, like, look, it's healthy to process, it's healthy to talk, but don't stare at your problems, right? Don't stare at them. Find a way to move on. Like, what's the point of processing trauma if you don't ever get through it, right? Like, at some point, you got to improve.
I will say this, and this is my, again, advocacy for if you're a veteran or if you're someone who's dealing with trauma, get in some kind of hiking group or book club or something, pickleball group, whatever, because what heals trauma is connection.
Mm-hmm.
So trauma happens because of something that happened to you or the way you take something in.
Mm-hmm.
But what heals it is you connecting with other people.
For sure.
And so that's the thing that we are really struggling with right now. I think we've been struggling with it since COVID, and we're not all right, and we need to get better. I was going to ask Chris, you say like the Olympic team, they've done better with the mental health. I think they actually have like some services here that the Huntsman has been involved in.
Yep.
But like, is the military better at helping?
They have gotten a lot better since I first started. But again, I think it's like in sports. If you want to win if you want to be the best, you want to win a championship, you have to take action to get there, right? Same thing. If you want to recover or get better, you have to take action. If you just sit there all day and think about it and stare at it, you're not going to get any better. You got to find ways to release that, to make connections, to do those things. So it's all about taking action.
What motivated you to get into the service? I always find this interesting, and again, sports talk radio show. The irony is Pat Tillman never wanted anybody to know his name, but he was used as kind of like this propaganda piece, obviously before his death. So I always hesitate to bring it up because that's not what he would have wanted. But it's a sports story of a guy that turned down an NFL contract to go serve our country. What was the origin story, Chris, that made you want to serve?
For me, my grandfather was in the Marine Corps. My dad was in the Army, so it runs in the family. I grew up in the South, in Georgia, where people are very patriotic. And that being said, as soon as I started to travel a little bit around the country and travel the world, again, bias, we have our problems, and I love the word, the Great American Experiment. Again, we're always growing, we're always learning, we're always changing, but we are a amazing country, phenomenal country, and so to be able to represent that and do what I think is the right thing most of the time is a huge honor.
Do you feel like this Great American Experiment is continuing to go in the right direction?
Absolutely.
Good.
I think I
love hearing that.
do. And
Good.
Again, we're going to make mistakes. There's going to be times that are harder and times we do some dumb stuff. But if you look 40 years ago, 80 years ago, I talked to my parents and grandparents where schools were still split. And people, there's still bad things happening. But in general, it's a great place to live and raise families.
I heard an amazing interview with a black professor who said that the values of America are aspirational. And so if you're not working for that, if you're not fighting for that, if you're not actively trying to make us live up to that, then you are not living up to the actual privilege of being born in America.
Yeah.
You were lucky enough to be here, and it's everyone's responsibility, every American's responsibility to make sure this country lives up to the aspirations that we set out. And I think that's the thing as a kid of the 80s, I really took things for granted. I'm like, everything is great. There's no. My dad and I argued over Iran-Contra. I thought that was like the worst thing to ever happen to the world, right? I think that if I've learned anything in the last 15, 20 years, it is that because things are good for you doesn't mean they're good for everyone. And service and being of service, like you talked about your purpose or your why, that's the way you live up to the ideals.
Yeah.
How can you be of service? How can you be of help to your fellow human beings?
I just love that you feel like our country is going in the right direction. I want to hear from people like you that serve our country and make sure that we all stay protected and can be spoiled in our freedoms to help us understand that we're still moving in the right direction.
We're in the right direction. I think we saw it even with the games. I mean, the USA beat in hockey. We beat Canada twice in men's and women's hockey.
Yeah,
This
we did.
country's trending in a positive
That's first time ever.
direction.
Yeah.
That was so cool watching those two teams win gold. That was so fun.
In overtime,
Chris,
it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're asking Chris to do what you did for me. Remember, because I was so discouraged about women's sports.
Yeah.
Like it's a lost cause.
Yeah.
We're never going to get what the men have. It's not. we can't get the attention. We can't get on the front page. We can't get the reporting.
Mm-hmm.
And look, it's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I think that it is. You would know better. The Caitlin Clark stuff with the WNBA has certainly brought a lot of interest and a lot of debate about how much credit should she get juxtaposed to the origins of the league, like all that stuff. But people are talking about it, they're covering it, and then ESPN is moving baseball off their Sunday night coverage, and that's going to be a place for women's sports. And I can just promise you, ESPN would not be doing that
And we can
unless there was legitimate interest.
Yeah. And we can circle back to Chris's book again on this one because, like Brian Stevenson, who also wrote an amazing book, said the opposite of injustice is not justice; it's hope. And if you lose hope, you don't have you can't accomplish anything else.
Yeah.
So hope is where it's at, and that's what I loved about your book because I thought, why would you do this? Why would you hold on to that? Why would you continue to do the things that, he's giving them chores to do, and I would be like, dude, we're on a piece of ice. My brother over here just fell through the ice into the water. I'm not gonna sweep these floorboards, and climb to the top of the hill to look for a ship that's never coming. Right? There's just so many ways. But I heard Brian Stevenson speak down at BYU in 2017, I think it was, maybe 2018, and he said that, and I thought that is true because it's not just doing the opposite of the thing you hate. It's having a reason to do better, to live up to the aspirations of this country.
So when it comes to the Olympic athlete experience in the village, what's that like? I think a lot of people would be curious.
Yeah, we're a little hesitant. This one was not a permanent structure, so it was a trailer park.
Oh,
that's what we had heard. So everything was temporary, but it was a bougie trailer park. It was much better than we thought it would be.
Okay.
But the food was great. We ate pizza and pasta every single day for
Lovely.
3.5 weeks.
That sounds awesome.
It was better than Sochi.
Yeah. I've been to some games that were great and some not so great. The Italians did an amazing job. All the volunteers were very nice. Everything ran pretty well. The Italian time for the buses were a little bit unique. But overall, it went pretty smooth. And again, I think it's just the brand of the Olympics post-COVID is growing, and you've seen the involvement with a bunch of people that came out there, like Jason Kelsey and Tom Brady. The amount of people who came out to support those things was very, very cool.
You got to teach Jason Kelsey to do bobsled.
Oh, did you really? That's
awesome. I was
awesome.
up here about 4 months ago, came out to Park City.
Okay.
Hung out with the team for 2 full days, and he practiced pushing. He went down the bobsled track. It was very, very cool.
Have you ever had a stop me in my tracks, I'm in awe that I'm talking to this person moment throughout the course of your career?
Yes, for me, it was 2010. I got to meet Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, cool.
Of course, I grew up.
Sure. Yeah.
In the 1980s and 90s, huge movie star, and just watching him being just a great athlete. I got to meet him in 2010.
That's. Have you ever had holy smokes, I'm interviewing this person, or I'm
only one time.
Who is it?
Wayne Gretzky.
Okay.
It was the only time I thought, would it be okay if I just reach out and touch him? I was like, I was trying to figure out how I could shake his hand because we're in those media scrums, which you've been in. We're like spooning each other, trying to do these interviews, and sometimes you have to share tapes, recorders, or whatever. But I was literally like a foot away from this kid that I had grown up in Alaska, thinking was just the god of hockey.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
And it's in Salt Lake at the games, and he had buried a loony at center ice and dug it up, and I just thought this is the best. I'll never top this sports moment. I will say though, the best sports moments for me are watching other people overcome something or figure something out that we didn't think they could do, like those underdog stories or those comeback stories. Like Alana, I am glad I wasn't there. I wouldn't have been able to ask a question. I would have just been crying the whole time. I cried when you crashed.
Well, did you have a chance to talk to Wayne?
Oh yeah, I interviewed him
because he's the nicest guy.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
and that's. I think for me, I haven't. I think this job beats the fan out of you.
For sure.
I always am looking for the great story.
Yeah.
Where's the story? And I'll say one of my favorite stories I ever did on the Olympics was a speed skater who tried for 12 years to make an Olympic team and missed out by a fraction of a second. I remember going and asking me if he would do an interview, and I thought he's going to say no because I wanted to do a story on if you spend all this time and you never make a team, was your time wasted? You know? And it was one of my favorite stories I've ever done, one of my favorite interviews. I learned so much from him. And I just think those are the things that when you have like starstruck moments for me, it's when someone says something to me that I take into my life as a human. Like the athletes have taught me, how do you be a better mom? How do you be a better wife? How do you be a better person? That's what I love about the job is I'm constantly learning from people who've gone through a fire. I hope I never have to go through and come out of it stronger.
Do you think the American experiment is moving in the right direction, Amy Donaldson?
I think it depends on us. And I've said this repeatedly to everyone who will listen. Everyone has choices to make. Everyone has a moral compass to make sure that it's wound to the correct and to the right setting. What are you doing? How are you helping? How much love are you giving? Whenever I get critical, I remember being really critical of something that happened a few years ago, and I was like, "Oh, I'm so mad! And I was talking to my mom, and then I was praying about it, like because it was really bothering me. That was really cruel thing that was happening.
Yeah.
And the answer I got back was, "What are you doing? What kind of love are you putting out in the world? You're worried about them. What about you?"
Yeah.
And I think that is why the American experiment is going in the right direction when we make it go in the right direction.
Well said.
Yeah, and if you look, that's why I think trying to read books is so important. Get that perspective of what was happening 100 years ago, 200 years ago, even 20 years ago. And again, for me, I definitely think we're trending in the right direction and love this country. And again, we have work to do. That's why it is an experiment. We've been doing this for only 250 years. Where you look at a Europe or a Germany or a different country, they've been doing this for a lot longer. And again, I'm excited to see where we're going. The fact that we can have these types of conversations is absolutely awesome.
I just love hearing it from you because, like I said, you don't have to have an opinion on everything. So certain things I'll just clam up about. But somebody who serves our country, believing that we're heading in the right direction is important. All right, a few minutes left, Amy. So let's get into the pod. Tell us the name, where we can find it, origin story, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, it came from an interview I did with Pablo where he told me about a book he had read that helped him with anxiety, and we had a really interesting conversation about it. Didn't expect it to ever do anything, but it kind of set. My husband heard the tape and said, I could listen to this guy all day, and I thought maybe we should make a podcast about that.
Yeah.
But also over the years, just talking to coaches, and I love to talk philosophy of coaching. Like, how do you convince somebody to see in themselves what they might not have any idea they're capable of, right? Or to work together in a certain way, or to buy into a certain system or mindset that's totally foreign from their personality, right? And I love watching great coaches do that. And I've seen really fiery coaches and really calm coaches. And, it's so fascinating to see the different ways that happens. And I've read these books. We've traded these book recommendations over the years. And so I thought, what I want to listen to. I want to listen to something that inspires me to be a better person, to educate myself, and is uplifting. And so we've been having these conversations, and I've read some of the best books I've read in the last decade, in the last a few months, and had amazing conversations with people about, just not just how they face challenge, but how they view challenge. And, I just read this study that said your happiness comes from what you're doing right now, and that you're 2.5 times happier if you're in this moment and not the last moment or the one coming up. And I thought so much of our lives is spent worrying about what we just did, worrying about what just happened or didn't happen. And these conversations have been, DJ texted me our next book selection next month is Boys on the Boat.
Oh, great, yeah.
And that's probably my favorite sports book. And he's texting me, this is incredible. This is an incredible story. I can't believe how bad this guy had it, right? And it's just that it just reminds you that somebody has walked this path before.
For sure.
Somebody has had this struggle before. And it's just been super uplifting. I love the book. Morgan Scally is going to be one of our coaches. And
awesome.
The book he recommended is it's mine. I was not super excited about it. I am loving it. It's so good.
What's it called?
Ego is the Enemy.
Oh, okay.
It's so good.
Okay.
And couldn't be a better book for this moment in time.
Sure.
Dad.
So,
for all of us.
So, what's the name, Amy? Where can people find it?
Coaches Book Club. It's on KSLSports.com. You can find it on Apple or Spotify, any of those things. If you want to see us in video,
there we go.
It's a video. Then you have to go to YouTube or to KSL Sports.
Well, look, thank you as always for coming in, Chris. Pleasure to meet you, man. And like I said, once more time, let me be emphatic. Thank you so much for your service. Appreciate it.
Now,
Yes,
now you have a
thank you very
resident
much.
bobsled expert.
Yeah,
If you ever
absolutely.
need to talk about bobsled, I am here for
Oh,
it.
you're
We'll
having a
get you in.
tryout, right?
We're having a tryout March 14th
Okay.
at the University of Utah
Okay.
called Slide to Glory. So if any local athletes are across the nation or here in Utah want to come try out, March 14th.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, we'll catch a break. Coming up next, Joe Cravens is going to join us, so we'll talk some college basketball. Want to let you know that League One Volleyball is Utah's professional volleyball team, and the next home game is at the BYU Fieldhouse on March 5th. Get your tickets today at lovbsl.com. That's lovbsl.com. Coach Joe Cravens next here on ESPN 700. Special thanks to Amy Donaldson and Chris Fote. What a fascinating guy, a lieutenant colonel in the Army and the current head coach of the bobsled team. Just got back from Italy. Good stuff there. Go to the website if you missed it. It is March. So the madness of March is basically upon us. And our next guest, one of my favorites, talk college basketball with. Joe Cravens, how are you, sir?
Fine. Spence, how are you doing, partner?
I'm well. I appreciate your time. So you're going to be on the call for the Utah game tomorrow. And before we get to that game specifically, Coach, we all knew this was going to be a process. Alex himself gave a really good interview to the Salt Lake Tribune. It was written about over the weekend. I just want to know from your keen basketball eye, are you seeing improvements with this Utah basketball team?
I have, and there was a time, Spence, that I kind of quit paying attention to them, so to speak. I did all their non-conference home games, and I got involved with the Big Sky games and, just kind of followed them from afar. But then knowing that I was going to pick up a couple late Big 12 games with them, started kind of paying attention. And one of the things, the biggest compliment that I can give them is, and Alex himself, is I think they're playing really hard right now with literally nothing to play for other than pride, which is a big deal. But it'd be real easy just to kind of mail it in right now. I had their game against Central Florida, where I thought they played hard, and the game should have went to overtime. They were kind of a victim of and not a bad call by an official, the correct call, but they were trying to foul and send the game to overtime anyway. That was a very winnable game. The game at Cincinnati was winnable. I think they're competing. I think they're really playing hard. They like every team that's is 2-14 in the league. I mean, they're still making some mistakes. They're not perfect, but they've not thrown in the towel. And I think any time you can say, hey, this team's really playing hard and competing, that's pretty high praise.
So let's just get to the bottom line here, Coach, as far as the talent level of the team goes, because I think Alex is a really bright basketball mind, and I think he will get this thing turned around. But you got to have the horses. You know this as well as anybody. There's no such thing as a great coach without great players, and I don't want to crack on any of these kids individually. It just seems like from my vantage point, every time I sit down to watch them, it feels like the other coach has got the horses that Al doesn't. So just from a pure talent standpoint, tell me what you see.
Well, I think you're right on, and I think in the transition of the coaching change, they probably were kind of shooting from the hip, so to speak, when it came from recruiting. And I'm like you. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus and say, well, this kid's not good enough, this kid's not good enough. But they're playing in such an unforgiving league this year. I had about 2 weeks ago when the Cougars had lost 4 in a row, I went to see my dentist, who's a big BYU fan. He said, my gosh, what's happened to my Cougars? I said, the Big 12 has happened to your Cougars. I mean, it is such a good league, the best league in the land right now. And you can't be effective in this league with kind of sort of pretty good talent. I mean, you got to have 2.5 NBA guys on your team in the Big 12 to be even in the upper 3 or 4. I mean, 2 guys that or probably won a lottery pick, another first-round pick, and then another guy, say like a Richie Sanders, that would have been a second, or probably still will be a second-round pick. And there's no bad coaches in this league, so you're not going to show up with subpar talent and outcoach anybody. You got to have talent on par with their talent and still be an awfully good coach. So it's a daunting challenge, I think, for Alex Jensen and the Utes right now.
All right, let's go over to tomorrow specifically at 7 o'clock. That's going to be the tip time. You can watch Coach on TV. He'll be on the call. You can listen to the game on this radio station. The final few games, the Arizona State, the final 3 games, I thought, man, if they can get a couple of those, it would be nice. They have 2 more chances. So tell us about Colorado at home tomorrow, and how does Utah, I'll just say, remain competitive, give them a shot down the stretch?
Well, it'll be a competitive game. I think Colorado's one of those teams that is not head and shoulders over Utah talent-wise. Colorado is very unique in that they're playing 6 freshmen. 4 of them had started. 2 of them will start tomorrow night. Tad Boyle, a friend of mine, has not given in to just selling out to the transfer portal. He has made the statement, when we've been at our best is when we have gotten young kids in and develop them. Now, will that still work in today's atmosphere of college basketball? I don't know. For instance, he has an outstanding freshman guard named Terrence Brown who leads them in scoring, and he's kind of flying under the radar because, again, in as powerful as the Pac or the Big 12 is, just terrific guard play and 2 or 3 lottery picks at the guard line. But my point to bringing up Terrence Brown, their leading scorer, he's averaging almost 17 points for him. I think he's the 12th leading scorer in the league, only the 3rd leading scorer in the league. But can they hold on to him? Now, after having a great year like this as a freshman, all of a sudden, there's going to be an awful lot of suitors with deep pockets come after him. So can that experiment last? Utah, with 2 outstanding guards themselves, has had great years in Terrence Brown and Don McHenry. Don McHenry only needs 33 points to be a 2,000-point scorer in his collegiate career. Now, he won't go down as a Utah 2,000-point scorer, which there is only 3 in the history of Utah's program. But tomorrow night you'll see 2 very dynamic backcourts in Terrence Brown and McHenry, and then the Isaiah Johnson kid I just mentioned for the freshman at CU, and a kid named Barrington Hargress, who is a transfer portal kid who came from Cal Riverside, who was first-team All-League player, leading scorer in the Big West last year, and a really, really good point guard. So you'll see really good guard play tomorrow night. And I think whoever defends and rebounds, I think is going to win the battle. Colorado is something like 12-1 when they've out-rebounded their opponents. And at this late state I think Colorado will probably go to some postseason play. It kind of gets down to who's going to come with that really competitive desire and effort to try to finish the season off. Both teams have 1 game left, and instead of trying to run to the finish line, let's see who's going to run through the finish line, so to speak, with these 2 teams.
Wonder if you see any Rick in Alex, any Majerus schematic, whether it's offense or defense. When you're prepping for this stuff, when you're watching Utah basketball play, are you seeing any Majerus in what Alex is trying to do?
Well, I see a huge difference in personalities. Alex is not a real emotional guy, and you talk to people like Donnie Daniels, who was on the staff with Rick Majerus when Al was there. They'll tell you Al's not a raw guy. Well, what made Majerus is his personality, and whether he could, as you and I have talked about before, Spence, could he survive in today's world or not, I don't know. But one thing about it, wouldn't matter how good or how bad their talent was under Majerus, you were going to compete more out of fear probably than anything else. I do see some similarities in what Coach Jensen is trying to accomplish in terms of defense and rebounding. How he's going about it is much different than what Rick Majerus would have done, because they're much different people. And in coaching and what you do in broadcasting, you got to be who you are. Now, Alex can't be Rick Majerus, and I don't know that anyone else can be. I do see a lot of similarities in what he's trying to accomplish. How he's trying to accomplish it is the difference in his personality and the difference in Rick Majerus' personality. I don't know if Rick Majerus' personality would play today. I think Alex is an outstanding teacher. I think he has the kids' ears. I think he's a very strong tactician. Only time will tell to see if he can turn the corner here.
All right, moving off Utah, let's hone in on BYU for a moment. And, of course, the Richie Saunders injury, it sucks on a number of levels, Coach. I mean, he essentially came back to try to play his way into the first round, and I don't know if that was going to be possible, but he's now lost for the season with a torn ACL, which isn't just a bummer for BYU basketball in a vacuum. It's a real bummer for a kid that wants to go make some money playing basketball, and I think that he can. But ultimately, right now, they're tied with West Virginia and Cincinnati for ninth in the conference. They're 20-9, 8-8 in Big 12 play. I'll just speak for myself. I whiffed. I thought they were going to be one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the league. So what do you attribute, I'll say maybe not entirely living up to expectations to with BYU this year?
Well, again, I think it's a bad case of the Big 12. I think it's just such a monstrous league and such a very highly talented, B, very well coached, and C, I mean, it is physically, it's like a fist fight every night when you step out there. And I obviously they were in the league last year. I think maybe the message hasn't come across to what, and I think they have a very good coach. They have very good talent. I think maybe where they've lost their way, maybe, I don't know that this is true, is they've lost that competitive edge that when you walk out on that court in the Big 12 game, again, it is almost hand-to-hand combat. And if you show up and you're just going to kind of try to out-talent people, try to out-coach people, and I'm not saying they have consciously done that, you've got to strap it on in that competitive area every time you step out there. I watched Houston, after losing 3 games, play Colorado because I knew I was doing this game. I think that was Saturday. And I'm telling you, when CU hit the court and Houston came out of the dressing room, they were on the Buffaloes like freckles on a redhead from the opening tip, man. I mean, they were on them. And not just on the ball, their rotations. They played so hard. And Coach Boyle knew that was going to happen. Houston lost 3 in a row, and Coach Sampson came out and said, I think we've gotten soft mentally and physically. I would not have wanted to been in those practices leading up to the Colorado game because they would not have been real pleasant to be in. So I don't know for sure this about BYU. I just don't know that they have shown up the last few games and competed at that extremely, extremely high level.
They're so ISO heavy this year, Coach, in a way that the team last year just wasn't at all. And look, AJ is generational. He is very special. And Rob Wright is a great ball and hand guy. But it feels like if it's not one of those two initiating something, making a play in an isolation setup, their offense just seems to stall in a way that it didn't last year. Is that fair to say?
I think that could be fair to say. I know that when you are coaching a guy or two on your team that is a future NBA star, a future NBA player, it's very easily to vacillate on the side of let's let him do it. The other guys kind of take a step back, even as a coach, you get in a tough situation or the other guys aren't being assertive enough. Well, let's give the ball to this guy and let him go. So it's easy to fall in that trap. And I can see where that has happened to them. And it seems like maybe the point you're making, Spence, it's been more here in the last few weeks. Obviously, they've not had the level of success. I thought they were sharing the ball pretty well early on. Sometimes it may have been with against a little lesser competition, but it's such a fine line between winning and losing and being a good team and just kind of an average team, and that can come and go on a weekend. And I think right now it's got away from them a little bit. That doesn't mean that here in the last couple games they can't turn it around and get to the tournament and be a good team. Right now they need to be concerned about getting to the tournament because I agree with you. They're kind of they're 8-8 in the league, and no one has been over 500 in the league and not made the tournament. I don't know how many teams under 500 in the Big 12 have made the tournament, but they need to assure themselves a bid by being over 500 in the league.
So tell me what you see when you watch AJ, Coach, because, of course, we have a pro basketball team that is doing everything they can to hold on to their draft asset. So much so that
that's very politically put, too. Thank you.
Indeed. So much so that they wrote a $500,000 check to the NBA. And, hopefully at some point the lottery luck lands in our favor and the Jazz can get a generational player, kind of like an AJ DeBonce or a Darren Peterson. I mean, those are kind of the two names at the top of the list. So I'll ask it this way. If the Jazz have the number one pick, who do you think they should take and why?
Well, Peterson scares me for all the things you've read about him.
Yeah.
I'm going to play tonight. I'm not going to play tonight. A lot of that I think comes from his agents, and I don't know the insides of all that. But that's a huge a warning sign to me. DeBonza, you don't ever hear. I mean, he shows up and plays hard. He's a great teammate. I think DeBonza there's no questions about him, his talent, his character. I take him. I think with his size, I think the only thing that can keep him, in my mind, from being a sure hit in the NBA would be some kind of injury or illness. And he seems to be very durable. He hasn't missed any games this year. And I'm a big fan of his. I kind of had my doubts because I'd read so much, and I guess I kind of didn't want to like him because of all the hype and all that. But he's legit, and I think he's a legit good person and a very competitive person as well. So if I'm picking, I'm picking him, and plus the size differential. I think that I would give him the nod.
So to your point about this league, every night it is just a heavyweight fight. And I've changed my opinion on who the best team is in this league a million times. I picked Houston to win the thing. Arizona is unbelievable. Iowa State, Texas Tech, Kansas, and even the teams that don't find themselves in the top 25. I mean, there are a lot of quality basketball played in this conference every single night. As of now, Coach, who stands out to you as the best team in the Big 12 this year?
Wow, that's and I see the same thing you see, Spence. From week to week, I threw out there Houston had lost 3 games in a row. Well, the 3 games they lost in a row were Iowa State, Arizona, and at Kansas. I mean, it's pretty easy to lose 3 in a row with that gauntlet of teams right now. I think Arizona and Houston are the 2 top teams. I think Arizona is extraordinarily talented. I think they have great chemistry. I think Houston just has that dog mentality, boy. Like I say, they came after the Buffalo CU the other night, and I just knew that was going to happen again after losing 3 in a row, knowing Kelvin Sampson the way I do. But they in any one night, I think any of those teams, Kansas has had nights where they've been extremely well, and is Peterson going to show up for the tournament, play every night, and be the player that he can be? I think it's very hard to pick one over the other, but I like both Houston and I like Arizona an awful lot. I think Arizona, if you put a gun to my head, I'm picking Arizona.
Yeah, and they've got a chance, I think, to lock up the league tonight. So give me a thought on this game. I mean, it's just another one of these games where we're going to be sitting down watching 2 heavyweight teams. It's Iowa State, Arizona, 7 o'clock ESPN. If Arizona wins, they will basically lock up the league. What do you think happens tonight, Coach?
Well, I think that game's at Arizona. I think Arizona is feeling pretty good about themselves. They lost a couple games, which I'm not sure hurt them. Kind of maybe check their ego a little bit, check the details a little bit of what they're doing. Iowa State is awfully good. I can see Iowa State getting to the Final Four, but what makes them so good is how hard they play. Very much like Houston, they're great ball pressure, they're great denial, and every once in a while that'll slip a little bit. You're talking about maximum effort each and every possession. When I watched them against Utah, Utah was fighting for their life just to get a shot. But that's the effect they have on everyone. And I think teams that that depend on that. It's much easier to have a bad night just due to human nature. I mean, you're talking about you have to play all out every possession for their team to be effective, and sometimes, again, just given human nature, that's not possible. But Arizona has terrific talent. I mean, terrific young talent. I think they are the most talented team in that league. Not by head and shoulders, but I mean they are very talented. And I think they have kind of found their stride, so to speak, or their swagger more than stride, I guess I'm saying. So I don't know what the spread is. It'll be interesting. I'm going to look at that. But being that it's in the McHale Center, given what Arizona's done in the last couple of weeks, I'm giving them a big thumbs up in that game.
Of all the Big 12 venues, because I've only been to a handful. I've gone down to Provo a couple times this year. I wanted to see AJ up close, and obviously I go to a ton of Ute games. But hardest place to play in the Big 12, Coach, what would you say to that?
I think Kansas. I think I'm like you. I think there's a lot of awful good places. At Kansas, it can be very intimidating. The crowd is just deafening there, and a long time ago, I was assistant at Washington. We played there. I've been in just about all of them. The Iowa State, the Hilton Magic, they call it. There's something about that place. But if I had to pick one, it would be Kansas. I think is the toughest place to play.
Let's give a little love to our friends up north. I mean, it just every year Utah State. It's like you can just bank on them winning like 23, 24 games, competing for the Mountain West Conference, oftentimes winning it. And who knows what they'll be able to do as far as locking in a seed, but it looks like they're going to be able to potentially wrap up the regular season title at UNLV. One more chance, New Mexico at home. And then it feels like they're a lock for the NCAA tournament, I would imagine, barring some crazy, crazy last-minute situation. But what stands out most, Coach, about what Coach Calhoun has done up at Utah State?
Well, number one, that's as we all know, that has great basketball tradition up there, and going back 2 or 3 decades, they've had terrific coaches up there. I mean, it's just almost whoever comes in there combines that that great tradition with great coaching, and they are really good. They play the damnedest matchup zone, Spence, that I have seen in a long, long time. 15 years ago, when everyone was trying to play the Fresno State matchup and the Amoeba, which was a matchup from UNLV, and I still get kind of tickled listening to people on TV. Someone comes out in a 2-3, and they say, well, they're in a matchup zone. No, they're in. They're just in an everyday 2-3 zone. You could recognize who was in a matchup by the slides and I tell you what, I watched Utah State probably 2 months ago. I had no idea what they were in. I had a Weber State game after that, and I said, who did the Utah State scout? And they pointed to one assistant. I said, explain to me what in God's name they're doing defensively. Because really, I mean, with all my basketball background, I still couldn't tell, are they switching everything? And it's a very unique matchup that I think just gives people fits. And I think because of that, they have a chance to knock off a team, maybe even two, in the NCAA tournament, because it is so hard to plan against, to play against, and they're pretty good at the other end of the court too. I don't know Coach Calhoun, but every time I watch him play, I think, hey, this guy kind of knows his way around pretty good. He's a pretty good coach. So they've had a great year, and I tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised if they got to the tournament and had some success.
All right, before I say you lose, I was glad I saw you on the rundown today because I wanted to revisit something we discussed maybe a year or two ago, and that's just the current state of the thing, the current state of the game, college basketball, and how it's changed. And it's the only sport in the world where there's free agency every year, and the players are getting paid now, and sometimes teams are signing G League guys or guys that have actually been there's a lot of chaos in the sport. Now, for me, the Encore product is still awesome. In fact, lately I've been preferring to watch college basketball over, pro basketball because 1/3 of your teams aren't even serious about competing. But tell me what you see and your thoughts just on the current state of college basketball.
Well, I tell you, and you kind of touched on this. I tell you, I think it's a mess right now. I think it is chaotic. I always tell people that I am so thankful and so blessed. I was in college coaching for 30 years, but I'm just as thankful and blessed that I am not in it right now. I wouldn't get back in the way things are for all the money in the world. But I tell you who loves it right now are the fans. They don't, it's just go fight win whoever you're rooting for, because they don't see the turmoil as much. They know, these guys are getting paid now. They know, well, if we don't pay him enough, he's going somewhere else. And they don't see that from the coaching, the administrative point of view, which to me is just getting more and more unmanageable. But it's still, in terms of just basketball, a great product. And I think a lot of good coaches like the Kelvin Sampsons and the veteran guys have adapted, so to speak, to what's going on, and have made it the game itself, just the 40-minute game itself, has made it as good as it's ever been in my mind. Now, what goes on before those 40 minutes and after those 40 minutes and during the week, it's chaotic. It's a mess right now, and I don't know. As the old saying goes, those cows are never going to come back in the barn. But there has got to be some rules and regulations and some guidelines, or I don't know what's going to happen. It's just going to keep going till it runs off a cliff, I guess.
Well, Coach, I appreciate the time, and hopefully we can just get some regulations in place because, again, the games are fun, and I guess that's the silver lining. Have a great call tomorrow. Have a great week, and I hope you're well, okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Spence. Enjoyed talking to you again, partner.
All right. The great Joe Cravens, longtime college coach. He'll be on the call tomorrow as the University of Utah men's basketball team. Couple more games left prior to the start of the tournament. Senior night tomorrow against Colorado, so James Okonkwo and Don McHenry will be featured and honored. Then it's on the road at Baylor. Then they'll finish it up. All right, before we catch a break, we're going to move over to some NFL draft stuff coming up. We got 2 hours down. We have 2 hours to go. New client on the show, and really excited to be able to work with them because I have worked with them personally for about 2 years now. It's Game Day Men's Health. So new year, right? We're moving into March. If you set a intention or goal to lose weight or get back in shape and you've kind of let it slip, well, certainly not too late. And I can just tell you my experience with Game Day Men's Health. They're giving you the same deal they gave me, which is a free consultation. You go in for a little bit of blood work. They go over your levels. And then they're giving you 50% off your membership for an entire year. Okay, so they have the weight loss stuff. If you've heard of like the trizipatide or semaglutide or whatever, and you're interested in that because you need to lose a lot of weight, this is the best way to do that because it's the cheapest possible access to it. Now, for me, I utilize their peptides and I am supplementing testosterone, which has allowed me to get in and maintain the best shape I've ever been in as an adult. As you age, it's just harder to do, right? So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com. It's GameDayMen'sHealth.com. They got locations in Lehigh, Pleasant Grove, Cottonwood Heights, and South Ogden. Find the closest one near you, but make sure you tell them that you heard me talking about it because they'll give you the free consultation and then 50% off your entire year of membership. It's our good friends at Game Day Men's Health. We're going to be joined by Ben Robinson coming up to talk some NFL, so keep it here on ESPN 700. The Alex Jensen Coaches Show coming your way tonight at 6 o'clock prior to the final home game for Utah basketball coming up tomorrow. Xavier Gozo is going to join us. Gozo had a assist on the Peel goal over the weekend as RSL won their home opener. But the NFL Combine continues to roll along. We're inching closer and closer to the draft, and we're going to get to know new analysts on the program today, welcoming in Benjamin Robinson on a Monday. Happy Monday, Ben. How are you?
Hi, how's it going? Good to be on.
Appreciate the time. So do you prefer Benjamin? Do you care at all?
You know, my mom would say Benjamin, so we'll go with that.
Okay, fair enough. Benjamin. All right. A lot of conversation about the two tackles from Utah with Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu both having unbelievable seasons and then really showing well in the Combine. So break those two down individually, if you would, and where do you think they're going to potentially end up?
So, yeah, the post-Combine bump or fall for players, I have yet to analyze that data, but pre-Combine, Spencer Fano was a top 10 player in my Grinding the Mocks data. So what Grinding the Mocks does is that we aggregate, at this point, a couple thousand mock drafts at the end of this cycle and analyze them to find where in the data we expect players to go. And I create a little metric called expected draft position. And so pre-Combine, Spencer Fano was one of, if not, I think he was my second-ranked tackle, slightly behind Miami's Francis Fainoa. And so coming into the Combine, Spencer Fano was viewed in the NFL draft community as competing for the top overall tackle spot as top 10 player. And then, on the other side, his partner in crime, Caleb Lomu, I have him at around the 22nd overall ranked player in my data. So, it's really impressive for Utah to be able to be churning out these kinds of players in this transfer portal era where, people's loyalty can be bought for $1. So I'm really impressed by the guys from Utah. One thing that seemed to catch my eye a little bit from some of the Combine buzz was that I think a lot of people who follow the draft really closely looked at Spencer Fano when he was testing and said, he would look pretty good at center or guard as well. So really impressive by Fano, but you definitely want to be thought of as a tackle coming into this draft. That's where the money is. That's where the top drafted players are going to be. And similarly with Lomu, I think he's kind of been slept on a little bit, maybe because of Fano or maybe because of a bunch of the other linemen. But Lomu has been solid to me the entire process. And so it's going to be really interesting to follow kind of the journey of where their draft stock is going to go when we start to get more of these post-Combine data that's coming out this week and next.
Tell me about your process. I find this pretty fascinating. I'm looking at the website. I've got your socials pulled up. Give me the Benjamin Robinson Grinding the Mocks origin story. How'd you come up with this idea, and kind of tell our listeners how you go about your business?
Sure. So I came up with Grinding the Mocks when I was watching the draft with one of my best friends. So I went to college at Pitt in Pittsburgh. And so I'm originally from Cincinnati, and one of my really good friends from college is from the Pittsburgh area. And so we bonded over the draft. We were watching the draft on our couch in Pittsburgh and thinking, we're listening to Mel Kiper Jr. give his analysis. And, we kind of thought, hey, like Mel Kiper might be really smart. He also might be full of crap. And so how do we kind of we have to trust his opinion, but what if we could come up with our own way of quantifying where players are expected to go on draft night? And one way we thought we could do that was with mock drafts as data. And so I began to collect those in 2018. And so basically what I do is I try to collect as many mock drafts as I can. And then I do kind of, what we would call now kind of AI. Back then we called it data science. A couple of years ago, we called it machine learning to try to tease our best guess around where these players will go. And so my job is not the job of a mock drafter, which is to kind of find the best pairing between the player and the team, but it's just to give us a sense of where a player's range of outcomes is based on the data. And more often than not, the data is really consistently accurate. So over the last, we'll say 5-6 years, I get about 85 of the top 100 players in the draft in my top 100, which is, I think, industry leading basically. And then I get about 27 of the top 32 in my top 32. And so it's just really amazing to see year after year the consistency of this type of approach. And this type of approach is not just used by me. that's utilized by teams all over the NFL to figure out when players are going to get drafted to help with draft preparation and in-draft strategy.
So the question, Benjamin, comes down to this. Is Mel Kiper bright or is Mel Kiper full of crap?
I think Mel Kiper is actually somewhere in between. So I'm actually working on a piece that I'm going to publish tomorrow about this because I think Mel Kiper is a really interesting story. So for a long time, I think people have thought of him as an expert. But going back to 2018 in my data, he actually has been really up and down. There have been a couple years where he actually had really good results. But like everybody else, he's just human. And so it's really hard to have sustained success year in, year out. But in fact, over the last couple years, he hasn't even produced a final mock draft. His last mock draft, the last 2 years, have been produced 2 weeks before the draft. And last year, he was, kind of like your uncle yelling at the TV, except he was on the broadcast about Shedeur Sanders and why he should have been drafted earlier than he was. So it's somewhere in between always. But one of the things about experts is that even if they're wrong, you continue to hear from them because they're experts. Well
said. So my producer gives me flack because I still read Mel Kiper's mock draft, and it's more just out of habit, Benjamin. Because I'm, you guys are young, and I'm a little bit older, and so I've just been. I have it up in front of me right now. It's just kind of more of like conditioning. Do you have data on who out there is like the best at this? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I definitely do. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with going back and looking into Mel Kiper's predictions. Like they have some value. It's just hard to be kind of the best from year to year. But yeah, no, there are some really strong drafters out there. So when I look at the data, some of the names that you think come up, the Daniel Jeremiahs of the world, the Dane Bruglers of the world, the Lance Sirlines of the world, some of the thought leaders, people who work for big time networks who their job is to analyze the draft, but also to have really good sources. But then also there's sometimes people that you don't even think about, people like to kind of malign them a little bit, but the guys at the website walterfootball.com, I don't stand by any of their content, but their mock drafts are always really solid. So there's this idea of we know who the thought leaders are, and we, in theory, they're the ones with the biggest microphones. But when we look at actual results, how can you rank these players is the ultimate test. And so to be able to compare that against actual results, to me, is really important. I'm not just a results guy, I'm a process guy. And so to me, I care a little bit less about the process than about the results, ultimately. But some of them are who you think they are, and then sometimes you need to be a little open-minded to who some of these other kind of more outside-the-box thinkers could be.
This is pretty fascinating to me. So let me go back to these 2 offensive linemen and kind of bottom line this when it comes to Spencer and Caleb. I guess the way I'll ask the question based off of what your process is what does the data say about where they're most likely to land come draft night?
So, yeah, in the data set, we can look at the different players and see, which teams were mocked the most to each of those folks. So let's start with Spencer Fano. I'm trying to pull up this data. So because he's mocked so high, there's a lot of teams that are in the running for his services. So one of those teams is Cleveland. So I think the Browns, even though they made a big splash today, with trading for Titus Howard, there's still a big amount of intrigue that they'll still go after a tackle. I think they're going to kind of take an all of the above approach. And they prefer to take kind of younger players. So to me, he seems like a really good fit for Cleveland. Lomu, it's a little bit different. So because he's more of a later in the first round kind of guy, the teams that are interested in him are usually a little bit more like Houston was a big spot for him. Detroit, I think, is an interesting spot for him. They have a lot of need at offensive linemen. Houston earlier today made that trade, so it kind of feels like they have even more of a need for offensive linemen. San Francisco as well. So to me, when I look at the first round mocks for those guys, those are some places that I think stick out.
So Dallin Bentley is a tight end that played at Utah. He didn't necessarily have a ton of numbers, right? But he's an elite athlete, and he showed, I think, over the weekend at the Combine that he is maybe somebody to keep an eye on. Any data points here about where he may land or if he's likely to get drafted?
Yeah. So in my database for expected draft positions, I have 5 players who I have enough data to be confident enough to make a projection on. I already mentioned Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu. You bring up Dallin Bentley. Right now, he's my 10th ranked tight end, and I have him as a top 150, top 150 prospect. So that's pretty solid. That's going to be your day 3 kind of player, which makes sense given his skill set. And then there's a couple other guys I'm happy to mention. So one is Lander Barton. You think the Bartons never end, but they keep coming. He's kind of in a similar range. I have him as my 15th overall linebacker, also around that 150 pick range. But the one guy who I think might be, struggle to hear his name called on draft day is Spencer's brother, Logan. So he's a guy that I think is more likely to go undrafted or get drafted pretty late.
All right, now a few BYU players, and now that we've covered the Utah side of things, Chase Roberts, Parker Kingston was actually the most productive wide receiver for BYU a year ago. He obviously is no longer part of the picture. We don't need to get into that, but Chase Roberts at the combine looked like he had put on some weight, had a big old beard. He came back with the thought of maybe trying to play his way up in the draft. What does the data say about Chase Roberts, Benjamin?
Yeah, I have 2 prospects along with Chase Roberts. We'll start with Chase. So I have about 200 mocks and big boards on him, and right now he's in the undrafted range. So to me, he'd be fighting to be a late draft pick. The guy who also is kind of in a similar place is BYU linebacker Jack Kelly. I think he'd also be struggling to get drafted right now.
So moving over to essentially, I've got your website up. This is a really interesting way to kind of attack this. It's pretty new, something I've never seen before. We all know that Fernando Mendoza is going to be the number 1 overall pick. So and look, I know that what you do is kind of analyzing all these mocks to predict where the players will go. But what do you make of the type of pro he'll be with the Raiders sitting there with the top pick on the board?
I think Mendoza is actually a really strong prospect. In the era of the transfer portal, I'm not sure we'll ever come into a season with a guy who has no hype, who transfers to a major program. Coming into the season, there was a decent amount of hype for him as a part of this massive quarterback class. I don't think he was thought of very highly, but he obviously rose to the top after a really impressive season. Last year, when I think about a player who has a similar journey to him, I think about Miami's Cam Ward, who, went from, in this case, from Incarnate Word to Washington State to Miami. Mendoza went from Cal to Indiana, but they both transferred into, big-time programs from where they were and had a lot of success. Mendoza is going to come into this draft, and I believe that I know he'll be my top-ranked player in mock drafts. One thing that I think that makes him different from a guy like Cam Ward is that Cam Ward was ranked about 8th overall in terms of prospects last year. But because of the position, because of the need, he went number 1 overall. So I think one of the things that will align more with the kind of prospect that Mendoza is kind of like a comparison to Joe Burrow, who also went from, one program to another, not the same as going from Cal to Indiana, going from Ohio State to LSU, but transferred, got on the field, fought, put together, maximized the situation that he was in. Joe Burrow, you look at the weapons he had on offense, Fernando Mendoza, his weapons on offense aren't anything to mock either. Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt are both, established, well-regarded prospects. So to me, Mendoza comes into the league. I think, the Raiders already have Geno Smith in that quarterback room, so they can choose to kind of bring him along slowly, or if he takes the knack of it right away, he can go in. He'll have pretty strong mentorship in that quarterback room. So, if I were the Raiders, I'd be scheming on how to fix up that offensive line and also think about how we improve that offense overall. But they'd run on the right guy to do it, I think. Bringing anybody with a Kubiak name or associated with the Shanahan tree is a good bet at somebody who can scheme up a really good offense.
Give me a couple names, Benjamin, of guys that really helped themselves in the combine process and maybe guys that went the other way after posting the numbers they posted.
So it's a little hard to say in terms of who's been hurt and who's been helped. I haven't been able to analyze that data yet. But when I think of people who are likely to come out as strong winners of the Combine, it's hard not to talk about Ohio State linebacker Sonny Styles. Coming into the Combine, he was my 11th ranked player. I think people who were really, fancied themselves scouts really adored him as a prospect. And so he was mocked closer to kind of where Dallas Cowboys are picking because they have such a huge need at linebacker at around, I think, pick 12. But I think after this Combine, he's going to go from being a fringe top 10 player to being a fringe top 5 player. And so that's a huge deal in my data. It may only sound like 6 picks, but that's a huge jump in value in terms of what he can bring to the table. So that's a player that I think about when I think about, a player who really helped themselves. And in terms of people who hurt themselves, the Combine is a real interesting thing. The players tend to only do drills these days that help them. If they know that their strength is not doing this certain drill, then they usually don't do it. So for the most part, you don't hear too much about players who didn't do great at the Combine because they usually just say they're going to kind of wait and do their athletic drills at their pro day. So it'll be interesting to see who didn't, who moves up and who moves down here, I guess. Some of it is a little bit last year based on, if you didn't participate, then you kind of get knocked a little bit. But sometimes it can be a harbinger of things like future injury. Last year, my data on my Substack, you can find this from last year. The top riser in my data was Missouri offensive tackle Armand Membu, who was drafted in the first round by the New York Jets and had an excellent year. And the biggest faller in my data was Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan, who got drafted much later than people expected in the third round by the Cardinals, had a nice year. So to me, it's if you get dinged after the Combine, it's usually because of some reason you didn't participate. And then if you did participate, oh boy, you probably did because you were really good at it and then you trained really well. So I think you got to be careful when looking at these Combine numbers, seeing all kinds of information about averages on all these drills going, down or up. It's definitely impacted by who's actually participating in the drills. So, but yeah, I think Sonny Styles will definitely be a huge winner coming out of this week. And I think it's going to be hard to tell, but I would guess maybe somebody like a Jordan Tyson or somebody like that who didn't even really participate at all, who was mostly there just to get medicals checked.
What do you find to be the most beneficial data point when it comes to the Combine experience? What the measurements or the drills or whatever that these young men are going through. What are the ones that you believe, Benjamin, actually can tell us potentially predicting for success in the NFL or maybe lack thereof?
Yeah, so, I think, like I said, the Combine doesn't have as much meaning as it does anymore. There's even been kind of some amount of, water doused on the measurements, which you think would be the most straightforward part of the Combine. Hearing about players whose arms are, this much longer since they were measured, last month at the Senior Bowl. So it's very confusing. I feel like I have a little bit less belief in the measurement than I used to. So yeah, there's like a lot of different varying value in the different drills depending on what position you play. Some drills are more valuable at predicting, for example, like your draft position, like the 40-yard dash for wide receivers versus actual on-the-field production. Wide receivers, it definitely helps to have a fast 40 to get drafted high, but doesn't always lead to them actually being, positive contributors on the field. So there's a lot of context that, I'm not as familiar with all the different predictive value of each drill. There's lots of stuff you can look at. Simber Sports has done like a nice article on that recently talking about that. My friend Kevin Cole, who's runs a Substack called Unexpected Points, unearths his 15 years of data points about athleticism. It's just really hard to fill in the dots, like I was saying, because of the participation in Combine drills. Doesn't mean as much as it used to. And so you just got to be careful when analyzing this data. But I think there's no one point that matters the most for a specific position, a collection of points. So there's a careful analysis that's being done on the team side as well as in the public. So
let me, I will make an admission. I'm a lifelong suffering fan of the New York Football Jets, as I'm a Northeast boy at heart. So how will they screw this up? What do they do at 2? Okay. Is it a no-brainer at 2? What do you think?
So I think number one that, the Jets are being, I think, run very shrewdly these days. I think you have something to be hopeful about. So I'd start there.
Thank you.
With Dante Moore, the quarterback from Oregon, returning to school, the Jets have a little bit less. There's a little bit less of a decision to make here. What you do is you pick the best player available and you draft him. And so, to me, this is kind of a nice position to be. They still have a lot of draft capital next year and in the future. So, my feeling is that they'll probably go after some type of defensive player with their first pick. Right now, in my data on grindingthemocks.com, you'll see Arvell Reese, the linebacker / edge rusher from Ohio State, is their top mocked player. He's my second overall ranked player for a reason. People view him as like a very special player. The only problem that I see there is that there is some amount of projection, because he and Sonny Styles were, running mates at Ohio State in that front seven as linebackers. They didn't primarily rush the passer. And so, to me, there's a bit of projection that you have to make with Arvell Reese. If you're comfortable with that projection, then he's the one who I think is most likely to be the second overall pick. If you're a little bit less comfortable with projection, then Texas Tech's David Bailey would be the person that I would look at. He's the prospect that I think is the most polished, the best overall rounded pass rusher, and he has the benefit of having played a lot of time as a pass rusher, so you don't have to do, hopefully, as much projection. So to see him where he could be as a pro.
Well, I appreciate the positive attitude, Benjamin. You were coming to this clearly with ever having to cheer for this horrible organization. So I will believe that
I'm
it's
a Bengals fan. So
okay.
I've been there,
Okay, fair enough. Hey, really good stuff. Tell our listeners where they can go access your work.
Sure. So you can find my work at grindingthemocks.com. There you can see my app, and you can look up all kinds of information about the top 32 overall players in this year's class. I have a little Substack blog as well, grindingthemocks.substack.com. And you can find me on X/Twitter at Benj_Robinson, and the website and grindingthemocks.com. So appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you. There he is, Benjamin Robinson, grinding the mocks. If you're looking for the most likely landing spot for a prospect, he has a pretty fascinating process where he analyzes all these mock drafts and then comes up with the most likely landing spot. So definitely check it out. Give him a follow. One bracket, $1 million. It's the ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM $1 Million Bracket Challenge going live on Selection Sunday, which is right around the corner. Sign up today on ESPN700sports.com. It's brought to you by Big Willie's, Game Day Men's Health, Intermountain Bobcat, Budweiser, the Intermountain Sportsman's Expo, Burger Fusion, and the Utah RV Show. So on the scale of Mel Kiper Jr. being an expert and being an idiot, Benjamin has determined that he's somewhere in the middle.
Which, I find it fair. As I said before, I don't think Mel Kiper's an idiot. I think he gets a lot of credit for kind of being ahead of the curve as far as really exactly what Ben was just talking about, which is compiling a bunch of information from teams, from mocks, from all of the above, and then just kind of regurgitating it onto ESPN's TV platform. Now, where I have seen Mel Kiper just completely fall on his face is evaluating like specific players. If you ask him to like dig deep into a certain player, especially at the quarterback position, it just doesn't sound like he's got a lot there. It doesn't. I don't know. It sounds like a nerd who's never played the position or played football. And listen, I played high school football. I'm not going to be one of the guys that says, "Hey, if you haven't done it, you can't talk about it." But Mel just it does seem very much like his angle is based on that information, and the eye test is gone for him. And again, he's been proven way off on a lot of quarterback evaluations, and those are what stand out to me.
Yeah, it's a testament to being first at something. I mean, he kind of is the godfather of a lot of these processes, whether you like his stuff or not. He carved out a lane that a lot of people now exist in, but once upon a time, it wasn't a very crowded space. And that's why I think, just for me, when I hear mock draft, I think Mel Kiper, just because he's been doing it for as long as he's been doing it.
Yeah, and it's totally fair. And like I said, I think that brings value. Like he has his space in that regard. But when it comes to QBs, just take it with a grain of salt. That's all I'll say.
His meltdown with the Shedeur stuff last year was pretty epic to watch.
It was weird.
It was weird.
It seemed like personal for some reason. Maybe that's because he had Shedeur high on his list, and then the kid who went 4-13 at Colorado went on and had a really rough year his rookie year. Now, hey, you got time, but I think we'll be saying the same thing about that as we said about Jimmy Clausen take that old Mel had.
The Jimmy Clausen take, that's right. All right, we will catch a break. I want to remind you that the Utah men's basketball coaches show, the Alex Jensen coaches show, will come your way at 6 o'clock tonight, about 90 minutes from right now. Final home game of the season for the Utes tomorrow, senior night for Don McHenry and James Okonkwo, 7 o'clock against Colorado. So we'll preview tomorrow's game and talk some Big 12 basketball, maybe some big picture college basketball before we send it over to the Alex Jensen coaches show. But coming up on the other side, RSL again beating Seattle at home 2-1. Your final score there. Xavier Gozo, who had an assist on the Pio goal, will be our guest after a quick break. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. Got the Alex Jensen Coaches Show coming your way at 6 o'clock tonight. It's the final home game for the Utah men's basketball team tomorrow here in Salt Lake, senior night. So James Okonkwo, Don McHenry will be on it. We're going to get to some college basketball storylines in a little bit. And also the Jazz are in action. Just talked a little NFL Combine with a new friend of the show, Ben Robinson. RSL, again, beating Seattle. 2-1 at home. Home opener for the club. They are on the road at Atlanta this week. Then they'll be back for a game against Austin. Our next guest had an assist on one of the goals. Always fun to bring in Xavier Gozo on a Monday afternoon. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for your time. So another home win against Seattle. You guys own them. What gives here? They have not won in Utah since 2011.
Yeah, I think it's always a hard matchup between us and Seattle. And I think our stadium is a really hard stadium to play in. I think obviously they struggle at the altitude, and that's an advantage for us. So, yeah, I think we've dominated them for sure for the last 10 years.
I got to know what it's been like, this ride for you, how just a couple of years ago, maybe not a lot of people even knew who you were, and now you're thought to be one of the rising young stars, not just for RSL, but in all of Major League Soccer. What's the past, I'll say, year and a half been like for you?
Yeah, obviously last year, starting a bunch of games and at the start, not even playing and not even being rostered at the start of the 25 season. It's been crazy. I feel like everything's moved pretty fast. And, yeah, I feel like 1 minute I wasn't starting, and then next time I'm starting 20 games in a row. So I think that speaks to how fast the sport moves, and that there's so many people that are ready to come on off the bench or wherever you are and just make an impact. So.
Tell me how you perceive your growth to really how it's kind of unfolded from your vantage point. You know, the improvements that you've made as a player and just learning to grow and mature as a person. I mean, you're still very, very young. You're 18 years old, obviously. But how would you, Gozo, characterize your own growth?
Yeah, honestly, I think in the last 2 or 3 years, I feel like I've just grown in maturity. I feel like both off and on the field. I feel like was the main thing that I needed to fix or grow on to start playing on the team, in the first team at least. Yeah, and I think I just matured a lot over the last 2 years, and Pablo's helped me do that, and all of my teammates especially. I feel like just knowing when I should do certain things or when I shouldn't.
Now, as far as simply your playing style, how do you feel like you've grown and improved in that way? And what specifically has your coach asked of you this season as you're going to be and already have been in more of a featured role?
Yeah, I think my playing style has changed a lot. I feel like at first, I think I was just kind of a raw, athletic, fast. I mean, that's all really I did, run and running behind. And I feel like more over the last 2 years, I've been focusing on just my cleanliness on the ball and just working on combining and my playmaking ability. And I think that's gotten much better throughout the years. And Pablo just asked me to work hard basically every season, every day. And obviously playing in the wingback role this season, he's asked me to take more of a defensive role. Obviously, while also being in an attacking role, so take on both of those challenges, which is, been tough for me for a little bit, but I think I'm picking it up little by little. So, yeah.
Do you have Pablo asked you, which he won't, he's your coach, I get it, but do you have a position of choice, a preferred spot you'd like to play in, or either side of the field as well?
I like to play on the right wing or left wing, but yeah, those are my preferred positions.
Okay, fair enough. How did that bicycle, and look, unfortunately, LA came in and stomped the team, but how did that snapshot moment change? I feel like we all knew you out here because we've known you for a while, but I feel like that highlight, that must have been an interesting experience to watch something like that go as viral as it did.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like it was an amazing goal, and I feel like it was an amazing moment for me and my family, obviously. Yeah, I think I was a bit shocked when I seen all the attention it was getting, but yeah, I'm honestly super grateful for that and all the attention that he got.
Let's learn a little bit more about you and the family situation. Your middle name, Didier Drogba, was your father's favorite player. So I'm curious as to when you first had a soccer ball placed at those feet, and just kind of give us a little background on you and your family and what our listeners should know.
Yeah, basically from the day I was born, my dad had me watching soccer and playing with the soccer ball and, wearing all the jerseys and getting into it. So I think I was just immersed in it from a very young age. And my dad actually coaches soccer, and he played when he was younger. And my mom played a little bit when she was younger. So I feel like my family was just a big soccer family. And it was just kind of what I grew up around. And I have one older brother. He also plays soccer too. So obviously having him play, I want to be like my older brother. So I want to follow in his footsteps. And so I'm chasing him my whole life as well. So I think all those factors helped me just fall in love with the game, and now I'm here now.
Is your brother still playing? Is your brother playing anywhere right now?
He plays for UU. He just finished
cool.
his senior season last fall, so he'll graduate college in this summer. And I don't know. He might try to play somewhere else. We'll see what happens, but. Yeah, at the moment he plays for UVU.
I got to ask, because there are 4 boys in my family, and a lot of competitive basketball games ended oftentimes in things that maybe weren't the nicest to say to your brother. Do you guys have a good relationship? Do you guys like to compete? What's that dynamic like?
Yeah, he's my best friend, so
cool.
I think it's a really good dynamic for me and him. I feel like, obviously, I think in regular situations, I feel like maybe an older brother would be upset that his younger brother's doing as well as he is, but I think he's super happy for me, and we just support each other. So,
wonder as far as your teammates, like when you're not at practice, when you're not at training, when you're not playing in a game, who are your best friends on this team?
Yeah, honestly, all the guys are amazing, but I feel like my best friends on the team, probably Kobe Henry, Zach Booth, Tyler Wolf, Ari Fuel, Philip Quinton, all these guys, Jake Ladd. I feel like we have a really close-knit group, so I feel like all of us really hang out together and are pretty close to each other.
See, that's good to hear, because, I mean, again, it's an interesting roster with a lot of youth, and then you've got some vets as well. Have you ever kind of but you do feel like support from your veteran teammates are not picking on you as the teenager on the team?
No, 100% no. I feel like, obviously, sometimes, I get in the middle of the rondo. I have to be in the middle every time because I'm the youngest or whatever, things like that. But I think they really embraced me from day one when I was 16, when I first started training with them. So I feel like now we've built a relationship that is really strong. So.
Wanted to ask you about Diego. Of course, it's interesting to watch both of you now because you're kind of following a little bit, Gozo, in the footsteps of what Diego was able to do. And I know that you've had some national team experiences with some of the U20s, and obviously at some point I would imagine you would very much love to play in a World Cup. We're going to see Diego do that this summer, and you've kind of had a front row seat to watch his growth. Talk about kind of the player he's become and then the dynamic between the two of you as these young stars on this team.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, playing in the national team, playing in the World Cup especially is a dream that I have as well. And obviously to see him do that is amazing. I'm honestly so happy for him, and he deserves everything that he has coming. And, yeah, I feel like we have a good relationship. I think, I make him better. He makes me better. And I feel like us competing in training and then working together on the weekend is great for my development, great for his development. I think, obviously I hope to play in the World Cup and be in the first team of the national team one day as well.
And you got the game to do it, kid. I'll tell you that much if you just keep working, which I know you will. Let me ask you about this new system that Pablo has implemented as far as the formation change with 3 in the back, 3-5-2 or 3-4-2-1. We'll see what happens when everybody gets over here and is healthy. But what has this, in your opinion, changed about the club, certainly on the attack, which is just where we struggled a bit last year? How is the process going so far?
Yeah, I think it's been going good. Obviously, I mentioned that I've been playing the wingback position that I'm familiar with at the start of the season, but obviously throughout preseason I've been playing it and have been getting more used to it. And I think regarding the attack, I think it just helps us get more numbers into the box and get more numbers forward. And then with the 3-back, we have a kind of a safety net back in the back, so we can transition a little bit more and just have more numbers going forward, I think, is the main objectives for us.
So where are we at in the process of getting all of the players who've been acquired in training? Can you shed some light there? I know there's some visa issues, then there's some injuries as well. How close are we, Gozo, to having this team at full strength now?
Yeah, I think we're really close. Obviously, you saw Morgan play on the weekend, and Stein Sparings is back in training now as well. And then Wanma played in the weekend as well. Yeah, and Victor Alatunji is almost back as well. So I think we're really close here.
What are the challenges of breaking in a new roster like this, getting new teammates, and having to say goodbye to some others? What are the keys to making sure this process goes as seamless as it can be?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's challenging losing old teammates and bringing in new ones. Maybe the chemistry is not as good as you would like, but I think with this group, we'll have no problem with that. I feel like over the preseason and as we've spent more and more time with each other, I feel like all of us are gelling, and the chemistry on the field shows that as well. So I think there will be no problem with integrating new people into this team.
Now, as far as the talent level goes, how would you characterize? Pablo came on the show about 2 weeks ago and said it's the most talented team he's had since he's been the coach. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think we have so many talented players, and I think you see it with even young players like Luka Moisa, Aiden Hezerkani. These people are so talented, and while being so young, I feel like we do have a young roster, but we have so many talented players at every position. Even the players that don't start are so talented, and I feel like we can do big things for sure. Before
I set you loose, a little birdie told me that you had I knew about your broken leg, and you are a member of the LDS Church, and he said that the kind of utilizing faith really helped you get through those times. Can you talk about that dynamic a little bit?
No, 100%. Yeah, I think during that time I was 16. I had just started playing with the Monarchs. I played maybe 10, 15 games, and I felt like I had a lot of momentum going into the season, and I felt like I was going to get my chance with the first team. Soon hit there, and then I went to a tournament with the Academy GA Cup, and then broke my fibula, which was hard for me, obviously, and hard for me mentally, I think, especially just because of how young I was and just the thought of maybe never coming back the same. So I think me focusing on my family and my faith really helped me stay positive and just work as hard as I can to get back as I was before. And yeah, I think that really grew my faith and obviously built my relationship with my family and my Heavenly Father. So, yeah.
Well, look, man, you're a really exciting player to watch. You seem like you've got a good head on your shoulders. So sky's the limit. Keep putting the work in, and most importantly, stay healthy, okay?
Yeah, thanks, boss.
All right, there he is. Xavier Gozo, 18 years old. Broke Luis Gill's record last year for, I believe, goals accounted for in a season for a teenager. Shout out Luis Gill. I wonder where that dude's at. Born in West Valley. Yeah, 18 years old. Had a really good assist on Peel's goal over the weekend as RSL just continues to dominate Seattle. This is a really fascinating thing because Seattle's good, really good. I mean, more often than not, they're contender for MLS Cup. And I believe, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm smashing Sounders tape in my free time, but I think that was pretty close to a first-choice 11. Albert Rusnak was in the group. Jesus Ferreira played. The Roldan kid played. It's weird, man. RSL, Seattle has not won in Salt Lake since 2011.
We don't lose to those guys.
No, we don't. Send him back up to the Pacific. Go smoke weed and listen to weird, dumb music,
Take
losers.
that, Albert and Freddie.
Yeah. Don't get me started on the Freddie Juarez conversation.
Hey, they gave us Pablo.
It did. Biblical. Freddie Juarez begat Pablo Mastroeni. I hesitate to bring this up because it's going to make JP very sad. The Moose is on Seattle.
Oh, yeah, take it. Moose, too.
Yeah, in your face, Moose. Yeah, go back up to Seattle and drink strong coffee and listen to Pearl Jam, nerd. I don't know. But that broke JP's heart when they got rid of Musovsky, the Moose.
Yeah. He's a decent player.
He's very good. I think he just wanted too much money, if I remember correctly. But they've got a good team. And RSL played a bunch of kids. No Olatunji, no Diego Luna. I don't know what the deal is. Oh, Gianlavogi was available. I don't think he played, though. Yeah, that's a bunch of kids sticking it to the Sounders in your face. 2-1, RSL gets the win. The goals came from Ari Pio, who, as I referenced, it was an assist from Xavier Gozo. And that Hazarkani kid is good. I mean, they've got all these kids, all these young players that are actually stepping up and playing really well. So, good to have soccer season back. RSL is on the road this weekend against Atlanta. They'll be back home on the 14th against Austin, and then heading to San Diego after that. RSL.com is where you go for single game and season ticket options, and I will take this opportunity to tease my new show Thursday nights, 10:35, KMYU. Myself and Brian Dunseth. It's called Talking Real, Talking RSL. A lot of fun. Dunny is a wealth of information as it pertains to the global game, both domestically and worldwide. So 10:35, KMYU, Talking Real. We'll break down the win against Seattle, look ahead to a big match against Atlanta. All right, 3 hours in the books, 1 hour to go. Don't forget, 6 o'clock tonight, it is the Alex Jensen Coaches Show. Final home game for Utah men's basketball is tomorrow against Colorado. It is senior night. So let's try to get out there and give a little love for Dom McHenry and James Okonkwo. An interesting trade was made in the NFL. We'll get to that stuff in the 5 o'clock hour. Then we'll send it over to Bill and Coach Jensen at 6 o'clock right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. All right, Drive at 5 time, Monday afternoon style. We're looking at 5 o'clock straight up on a chilly, rainy Monday afternoon. Happy Monday to you. Hopefully you had a fantastic weekend, off to a good start to that work week. And thanks for making us a part of your day today. We're going to do a little college basketball coming up in a bit. The Alex Jensen Coaches Show will come your way at 6 o'clock tonight. The Utah men will play their final game tomorrow. I should say final home game tomorrow, as it is senior night. James Okonkwo, Don McHenry will be honored. And Colorado is in town for a 7 o'clock tip at the Huntsman Center. If you have nothing to do tomorrow night, let's head on up to the game. 7 o'clock tip. It is on ESPN. Joe Cravens will be on the call, so we'll catch up with Joe coming up in a little bit. And then, obviously, you can watch it on ESPN. You can listen to it here on ESPN 700. The final game of the season will be Baylor. Since you and I last spoke, a loss on the road to Arizona State. And Utah finds themselves now at 2-14 in the Big 12 conference standings, which is tied for last with Kansas State. So, Alex Jensen Coaches Show coming up in just a little bit. The Utah Jazz are in action tonight. Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets are in town. Have not seen an injury report as far as who will be available and who will not be available, but we do have some breaking news in the NBA. Trae Young is actually going to make his debut for Washington. Ironically enough, it'll be on Thursday against the Utah Jazz. Now, we've talked about this quite a bit, as the Jazz were fined $500,000 by the NBA for resting their best players in the fourth quarter after having leads, and they deserved to be punished, as I've said before. But Washington has straight up held these guys out. And I'm quite sure there was no chance that they wanted to play Trae Young this year, or even after making that acquisition, because Washington has a top 8 protected pick that they lose if it's out of the bottom 8, just like the Utah Jazz. So I have to wonder whether or not the league is actually getting involved here, because Giannis is also coming back, and Milwaukee is going nowhere this year. I thought they were just going to shut him down. Giannis will be back this weekend. So does that change what Milwaukee will try to accomplish? Are they going to try to get back into the playoff hunt? I mean, they weren't good even when Giannis was playing this year, but he's good enough that if he catches fire at the right time, something crazy could happen, especially in the Eastern Conference, where Detroit continues to be really, really dangerous. And then beyond that, it's a group of about 4 or 5 teams, including the Knicks and the Celtics and, the Cavs. You can throw the Raptors in there. Cleveland actually has been better with Harden as of late. They're 7-3 in their last 10. The Knicks do not guard the way they did a year ago because they fired a really good coach and replaced him with a really average coach. So the East appears to be pretty wide open. No update on the Tatum stuff just yet. Because if you're Boston, with Jaylen Brown legitimately being an MVP candidate, and when you look at the list of the MVP favorites, many of them are in danger of not being eligible for the award as a result of the games they've missed. Jaylen Brown could win the thing, and you're right there. You're second in the East in the standings, and you're second in the league. No, third in the league in net. I mean, they've been that good. They're plus 7-6. So OKC is 1. Detroit is 2. Boston's 3. Now, Tatum's not going to come back and just be Tatum right away. But if you're Boston and you can throw Tatum into the mix here, you got a shot to throw punches with everybody in the East. Now, with the Utah Jazz side of things down the stretch, just 22 games left, thereabouts, 20 games left. They've lost 5 straight, they've lost, 7 of their last 9. And we know what they're doing. We know they're looking to just hold on to the asset. Dropped a couple of home games to the Pelicans. The Pelicans are a really interesting case study because when you watch them play, they should be better than they are. I know they've had a ton of injuries. Zion Williamson, by the way, I think I read today he's played in a career-high 35 straight games. That's ridiculous. I think he's been in the league 6 years now. But Herb Jones, Zion Williamson, Sadiq Bey, I mean, they've got some decent talent. The Derek Queen kid, their rookie, is a really good player. I really like Jordan Hawkins in the draft process, the kid out of UConn. So the Jazz lose a couple of games to the Pelicans, 129-118, and then 115-105. And I would just say the rest of the way, we're watching for little snapshot moments. Does Cody Williams want to be an NBA player? Can he show that he has an NBA skill set? The growth of Ace is, to me, number one, because I think he's got the most potential on this team, and I'm not sure that it's close. We saw Keontae George come back in the second game against the Pelicans from a ankle injury. You could tell there was some rust there with Keontae. He's been sitting for quite some time. 23 minutes, 17 points, 4 of 11 from the floor, 1 of 6 from 3. So Jazz dropping a couple of games. But Nikola Jokic, worth the price of admission as the Utah Jazz are in town tonight. The BYU basketball team will get back in action. They got 2 more games left before the Big 12 tournament. And I don't think they're in danger of missing the tournament. It is wild that I even just said that sentence out loud based off of what, well, I'll just say I was expecting. I feel like a lot of people picked them to be at least in the top 4 or 5 in the league. I thought they'd be a top 3 team in the league and eventually have a chance to go on a little bit of a run in the NCAA tournament. Don't forget, BYU owns the dubious achievement of having the most NCAA tournament appearances without a Final Four than any team in America. A lot of people thought this could be the team to do that. Now, the Richie Saunders, Dawson Baker. I mean, we've got to be fair here. They've lost 3 of their 7 main rotational pieces. And even with those 3, we talked about this early on in the year. The depth was an issue. And the interior defense continues to be an issue. They got smoked in the paint against a West Virginia team that Utah even beat on the road in Morgantown. So they're at Cincinnati tomorrow. They're going to finish it off against Tech at home, Texas Tech in Provo. And right now, BYU 8-8 in conference play. They're 20-9 overall. So they're right in the middle. They're tied with West Virginia and Cincinnati for 9th in the Big 12. Nobody saw this coming. So BYU drops out of the top 25 for the first time all season long. And they'll see if they can kind of close it out on a little bit of a heater. Maybe they get something going against Cincinnati and Texas Tech, and they bring some momentum into the Big 12 tournament. Because what we have seen from BYU is a signature win against an Iowa State team who on paper has Final Four talent. And they threw punches with Arizona in an 86-83 win. At Kansas, they were in it until late. They have gone toe-to-toe with the best teams in the conference. Not a lot of blowout wins here, blowout losses, I should say. But they are 1-3 now since losing Richie at Arizona. Then a UCF game that was weird. That was an odd game. We talked about it last week. And then a loss against West Virginia. The one win, Iowa State. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that this is a team that can throw punches with the best teams in the Big 12. But the injuries, the lack of depth, ISO heavy on offense. Like if it's not AJ or Rob, they break down. They don't get a lot of assists on made baskets. The team a year ago did that. And Kevin Young, after the West Virginia game, that was as upset as I've seen him in the 2 years that he's taken this job. And it was kind of an awkward dynamic because the post-game presser was Kevin, and he was flanked by AJ and Rob, and he was just tearing them apart. I mean, it was almost uncomfortable to watch. Like, hey, I'm sitting right next to you. You know, maybe we say this for the locker room. But honestly, they deserved their coach to dig into them a little bit. The defensive intensity was nowhere in the first half. And West Virginia's a fine team. It's not a great team, but BYU made them look a lot better than they were. I mean, I don't think they're going to be a tournament team. BYU at one point, I haven't checked the new bracketology. At one point, BYU was trending towards a top 3 or 4 seed. And my guess is right now, that's probably closer to trending to an 8 or 9 seed would be my guess. Now, how many Big 12 teams get in the tournament? And then ultimately, what will you be able to do during the Big 12 tournament itself? I'm pulling up the bracketology right now. Your 1 seeds would be Duke, Michigan, UConn, and Arizona. Lenardi has Utah Tech in as a 16 seed. He's got Utah State in as a 7 seed playing Texas A&M. Utah State has a chance to actually rise higher than that, win the final couple of games of the year, and then go win the Mountain West Conference, the Mountain West Conference tournament. You might have a top 5 or 6 seed. The Mountain West, historically speaking, has not done well in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, there are exceptions. San Diego State made a really good run not too long ago at all. BYU, as of now, a 6 seed taking on aforementioned San Diego State in the Portland region. So that's kind of good. You know, you can get a good traveling contingent up there. They would play the winner of Gonzaga, UC Irvine as your 3 seed. But BYU, according to Lenardi, trending down. Not on the bubble. Not on the bubble yet. Okay, so last 4 byes, Georgia, Missouri, A&M, Texas. Last 4 in, Auburn, TCU, Santa Clara, and Indiana. Next four out, VCU, Vatech, Seton Hall, Cincy. And then the first four out, Cal, New Mexico, out of the Mountain West, Ohio State, and USC. The SEC, according to this, would have the most teams in at 11. The Big Ten would have 9, and then the ACC and the Big 12 would both have 8. No, that's not right. SEC with 11, Big Ten with 9, ACC with 8, Big 12 with 8, Big East with 3, West Coast with 3, Mountain West with 2. So there you go. I mean, as of now, BYU would still be in. Highest seeded Big 12 team would be Arizona with a 1 seed. And I would imagine Houston a 3 seed. Okay, in the Oklahoma City region. So big games coming up for BYU if they want to get back in the mix to get a top 5, 4 seed. And for Utah, just you can get one of these final 2 games, get some confidence going into the Big 12 tournament. Who knows? I mean, it's not been great, Bob, as the kids would say, and that's just kind of the deal. All right, we will talk more college basketball It's wild to consider that the ACC, the Big 12, and the SEC potentially will all have their players of the year be freshmen. Because I think Boozer's going to win it. I think Cam Boozer's going to win it from Duke. AJ's still in the mix. I mean, look, for all of the conversation about what a letdown BYU basketball has been, AJ DeBonsa has been as advertised. And then the Darius Acuff Jr. kid who had 49 against Bama. He's a point guard for Arkansas. They might all win Conference Player of the Year, and they're all freshmen. That's never happened before. Because I'm looking at some of this mock stuff. Of course, if you're a Jazz fan, you have to continue to keep track of mock drafts. That's the most interesting thing surrounding the team. Right now, AJ DeBonsa is your Vegas favorite to be the number 1 overall pick. That has changed because it was Darren Peterson, and there are a few mocks that actually have Cameron Boozer at 2 because of Darren Peterson's weird medical situation. And I don't know what that is. It has been odd. We've talked about the parallel of Kyrie, right? Kyrie only played 8 games at Duke and had an injured hand, but everybody knew he was a genius. And so it was like, just take him and figure it out. There's more noise around Darren Peterson than there ever was about Kyrie Irving. Now, a little bit of a difference here because he's like taking himself out of games. You can see that Bill Self, penny for Bill Self's thoughts, quite frankly. I mean, look, anytime I've had a chance to watch Darren Peterson play, the talent is undeniable, just from a pure athletic standpoint. Caleb Wilson, he hurt his hand. He's out. I really like this Kingston Flemings kid from Houston who I've watched a couple of different times. Keaton Wagler from Illinois. There's a lot of really good players, man. A lot of really good freshmen available. Some good college basketball tonight. Arizona has a chance to capture that Big 12 regular season championship as they're going to take on Iowa State down in McHale. Jazz in action tonight, taking on Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. And, well, Clippers Warriors, I guess, is kind of interesting. The breaking news today, Trae Young is going to make his Washington Wizards debut against the Utah Jazz. Does it feel like the league may have sent a strongly worded email to Washington? Because they didn't want to play him at all.
Feels that way. And, of course, making his debut against the Utah Jazz seems a bit serendipitous. But, yeah, I mean, listen, I understand why they wouldn't want to play Trae Young. And at this point, now bringing him back into the lineup, it seems convenient as far as timing goes. But, I guess we'll see how the league handles the rest of the season and which teams try to, I guess, see what they can get away with, as the Jazz did.
Little move in once again, the NFL league season calendar officially opens next week, so none of this is official as of yet. But the Texans have acquired David Montgomery in a trade with the Lions. Your guy Juice Scruggs on his way to Detroit, in addition to a couple of draft picks, a 4th rounder and a 7th rounder. The 4th rounder is this year. The 7th rounder is next year. And the Texans have needed a running back for quite some time. He could do a lot worse than David Montgomery, of course, was in that timeshare with Jahmyr Gibbs for a little while, who's an awesome back. So NFL draft right around the corner. We've got some, of course, a lot of college and pro basketball to get to. RSL on the road coming up this weekend. And, a lot to do. But, Porter, before we throw it over to Bill Riley and Alex Jensen for the Alex Jensen Coaches Show, what comes our way on a Tuesday edition of the show?
On a Tuesday edition of The Drive, Chris Kamrani swings by the studio, talk a little bit of Real Salt Lake. We'll go all over the map with CK, I am sure. Zach Harper for your NBA Daily assist. The return of one Dave Fox to the program. And then the aforementioned Bill Riley is a big maybe so far on a Tuesday.
A big maybe for the voice. Well, we'll see. It is the final home game for Utah basketball tomorrow, 7 o'clock at the Huntsman Center, senior night for Don McHenry and James Okonkwo. Will say goodnight. Special thank you today to Amy Donaldson, Chris Fote, Joe Cravens, and Ben Robinson. In addition to Xavier Gozo, this young man, a very impressive player for RSL. If you miss any of the sound, website, ESPN, 700sports.com. Download our mobile app and take us on the go. That mobile app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then finally, for what we do in our space, 4 hours every afternoon, check out our podcast page, which is entitled, wait for it, The Drive with Spence Checketts, available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars. It helps. He's Porter, I'm Spence, saying goodnight. It is the Alex Jensen Coaches Show, coming up on the other side of a quick break right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700.